Questioning Everything with AdamW, Episode 11.
Good first step. Okay, so welcome to the Questioning Everything podcast. I'm your host, AdamW, and with me today again is Danny Jordão.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for being here. And what's on your shirt? I can't read it.
It's from the 90s or the 80s, DGK.
Oh, okay.
I think it was like a
GK.
I think it was like a clothing brand, like a dang ghetto kids or something.
Oh,
Dirty
okay.
Ghetto Kids or some shit like that. I don't know.
Okay.
One of the early hip hop brands. I could be wrong. I didn't Google it. my buddy, he's like 4 or 5 years older than me. He's just like, oh shit. And I'm like, I don't know. I just got this at Value Village, dog.
Nice. It's a good shirt. Good color.
Yeah.
So we were going to talk today about relationships.
Yeah.
Relationships. It's a weird subject because, again, I think most people are going to have a different idea pop in their head when you say the word relationship. People instantly are going to think of people and their relationships with other people, which is great because that's how we learn. Is we have these references in real life that are analogous to things that are harder to understand or that are less obvious, and relationships that we have in real life as far as person to person are the best analogy for relationships that exist outside of the human context, which is really how I perceive it more. I don't perceive relationships in the form of like, you know, should I call Billy because I haven't seen Billy for a while. I don't think I think of Billy, and I think of Billy fondly, but I don't. My version of relationships is we are connected in something far deeper, not to be a hippie, but that my exploration of the depth of how we're connected is ultimately making me more connected to Billy than if I call Billy and talk to the person who calls himself Billy, because we're both basically idiots. And there's something in us that's smarter, and there's something in us that knows a little bit more. And discovering that, or at least using that as the tool of discovery, is going to be better than simply talking to people, right? Yeah. So everybody else in the world can use the relationships that they have with people as a very good analogy, or as a very good example of the other relationships that you could imagine in the world. But I kind of look at it the other way. I'm actually learning from philosophy, because I've abandoned a lot of relationships, and I'm learning from these analogies that I need to circle back and go, okay, well, what, you know, I've taken a lot of the importance out of relationships in life, and looking at relationships in the form of everything else in the universe is really counterintuitive to my own actual social positioning, which is like to remove myself from social, because I'm not really interested in, I don't identify with people and I don't relate to people. We think about different stuff most of the time. And I'm okay with that at this point in my life. But yeah, to me, I've been actually being schooled by my ideology of relationships, to maybe be more considerate, or to, you know, again, it's like maybe it's a negative trait, negative human trait, to abandon something that is so obviously important on every other scale that it would be foolish to not recognize its importance in real life with human people. But I obviously overlook it quite easily.
What's that number called? That's supposed to represent like the maximum number of humans that should be associated with each other.
7. Like, 6 or 7. That's degrees of separation. Is that what you're saying?
No. There's I can't remember the guy's name who came up with it, but it's like the number is usually somewhere between like 150 and like 500, whatever. Like how big like
How many friends you can have before you start losing association or losing the relationship with them? Yeah, I think it's something like 150. I don't believe that.
No, neither do I.
It's a cool idea.
Yeah,
I would say that it's probably closer to like, if you have 15 super close friends, then that means that you don't have super close friends like I have super close friends. I have friends who have friend groups, right? Yeah. These friend groups are people that went to high school together and were friends and are now friends who have like kids, and they have barbecues, and they do the things together, and they're friend groups. There's like 7 to 15 of them, say. Yeah. And it's different because every time they go to a function, they're with these 7 guys out on a patio having scotch, and it's always been them, right? If you're a new person going into that, you're like a redheaded stepchild. It's kind of strange, but at the same time, I'm not sure if they have genuine, unique, individualized closeness with each other on the same level that I expect out of a human relationship.
What Danny was talking about is by Robert Dunbar, and it's 150 people.
150 people is the actual thing, and that was by Robert Dunbar, if you didn't know that.
Yeah. Right on. Thank you.
Yeah, you can turn your mic on if you want to do that, too. Yeah. That seems like a lot of people to me.
Yeah.
How are you supposed to have a meeting? As far as through a lifetime, I guess, where you don't know all those people all at once, that would make sense, I guess. This point in my life, if I had like 4 people that I know, which is basically what I know, I'm fairly content, right? But later in life, I can already tell you that I might be making errors, because later in life, I already know that I'm going to value human relationships a lot more than I do now.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be able to look past things that bother me today, things that I have a hard time getting over, that I'm like, I'd rather not hang out with almost everybody in the world, because I'd rather not have to deal with A through Z. Right? Yeah. Whereas I think when I'm 55 in another 10, 12, 15 years, I'm going to really value the people around me. Yeah. And in spite of whatever iniquities that they happen to have, I'll have, and I mean, I don't judge people for their iniquities now, because that's not the way the world works when you're a weird thinker, because you're not judging anybody but yourself ever. Right? That's it. Everybody that you meet, if you judge them, you're just judging yourself. Right?
Yeah.
So it's not that I'm, it's just simply that we all have these great iniquities, and I don't need to find more iniquities in other people, because I have all of them. I have all the problems I need in the world, and I don't need to find them, and really, right? Which is kind of what it seems to me. But
I've been finding like I'm learning myself like so much more these days. But one of the things that I've always known about myself is I have like a really sensitive, empathetic response. Like when I was a kid, if someone had an accent or whatever, I would start replicating their accent, and they would look at me funny. And I'm like, no, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to mock you. I'm trying to connect with you. And I'm such a stupid person that like, this is the kind of shit that I do naturally. And like so many times I've had to like explain to people that I've accidentally pissed off because I started picking up their speech pattern, the way, like all these weird things, like I just started absorbing who this person is, and all I'm trying to do is give them back to themselves to be like, hey, I'm trying to learn you, I'm trying to connect with you. But along with that, though, I've noticed that I've picked up some like really shitty things other people have done that like I've watched and I'd be like, that is so fucking stupid. I would never do that. And now I'm catching myself thinking and almost going to act in those manners that I judge generally. And I'm just like, now I'm actually kind of coercing myself. I'm having conversations being like, you know what? Fuck it. Go down that path. See where it takes you. Express yourself. Yeah. And I think I'm a little too old to be doing some of the shit that Like the way I deal with conflict primarily is what I'm talking about. Some guy today at work said something really stupid and he was way bigger than me, but I was already planning on just be like, you know what? How worth it is this job? Let's fucking tackle him. You're gonna hit the ground before he does because this guy outweighed me at least 100 pounds.
But I was like, worth it.
I was like, it might be worth it. Might be worth it.
Yeah.
Never done that kind of shit before. The furthest I've ever gone was like just yell at someone all belligerently, but like I'm starting to feel myself getting more angry and just like, you know what? Why shouldn't I like be a knuckle dragger and like let the inner caveman out, and then reason floods in? It's this is why you don't. Oh fuck!
I'm pretty bad for impulsive reactivity, and everybody loses no matter what. If you're going to start a fight or start an altercation or start a road rage or you're going to engage in anything like that, everybody's losing.
Yeah.
Even if they're just an idiot.
Yeah.
Right.
You're not proving any point. You're just letting things escalate into the basic animal instincts. Absolutely. And now it's fight or flight. Absolutely. But at the same time, repression of emotion and trying to be civilized is, it's not something that we need to do in life. Life doesn't really ask us of that. Life asks us to not be terrorizers, to not be terrorists, to not be disproportionately violent, to not pick on things that are weak, or to not pick on things even. But it does not ask us to be tolerant of anything that's oppressive on us or to us, or right. And in the relationships world, I think it's pretty cut and dry. If we look at chemical bonds, it's cut and dry. If we look at biochemistry, it's cut and dry. If we look at almost everything except for people, it's really simple that you've got an A plus B equals C scenario. Things either work or they don't. Whereas with people, it starts to get contrived, and you've got to be nice, or you've got to be polite, or you really don't. No,
you really don't, and that's just the bottom line.
Especially if you do it in a way that you are totally being a dick, but you do it in such a sly, smooth way that the other person is like, I don't know if they're being rude to me or not. Yeah,
because you're being passive aggressive.
Yeah.
Well, that's just it, and that's bottom line is people who want to be mean to you will wrap it up in some kind of a gift wrap. They'll plan it out. It's like snide comments, right? Like trying to belittle you by asking you a question that's being posed positively, which I'm guilty of too. But usually as a razz to friends, but no, people can be mean in a nice context, or people can be nice in a mean context. It's just simply not worth fucking worrying about, in my opinion. Everybody has to worry about themselves. They have to square themselves. They have to find a tool that's reasonably reliable. They have to measure themselves on that tool. If there's deviations, they need to correct the deviations. And then after that, they really just simply don't have to worry about it. I don't have to worry that one of my opinions are going to be bigoted, or they're going to be like, and I'll say things that are really questionable sometimes, but it's because I don't perceive the world through the veil of division, or through the veil of difference like that. No. Which again would be problematic to some people, right? Because it's like, absolutely, do you not recognize my uniqueness? And it's like, no, actually, I don't.
You're not unique.
Unfortunately, sorry. Yeah. If you want like cultural uniqueness and cultural identity, or some shit like that, or gender uniqueness or identity, I can appreciate that you want it, but I don't see it. I'm not there. We're all the same fucking person, wrapped up in a bunch of different skins, and whatever you think's unique is a pathology. That's it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not be pathological. Or we can be. But if we're going to question everything, then we have to be able to peel ourselves back and look what's under the skin. Look what's under the hood. Find out what makes us tick. Why are we doing it? And we're all going to come to the same conclusion, and that's that we're all made of the same fucking cow manure.
Yeah. We're all mushrooms, bro.
Yeah. We're all stardust.
What was that you were saying? I don't know if it was on the last podcast or if it was in one of our conversations, like texting, but you were saying like something about like how things have happened here in our solar system had to have been a product of multiple supernovas or something. Because like the time and the amount of material that is the product of supernova. Was that on the podcast? I can't even remember. I should probably edit it and find out. But it seems to me like the universe is far older, but I don't make a very convincing argument apparently because nobody agrees. Well, I think I like to agree because I think I've come to a similar intuition, or not necessarily intuition, but a similar view as yours, which I think is why like I gravitate so much to like keep banging out the same conversation over and over and over again. Because like either I'll find a new question that I haven't asked yet, or I'll get a new answer that I didn't even have a question for from some of the stuff you tell me, and it's all close. But I can't remember this. He's a physics guy or whatever at Stanford, and the way he explained the universe and the expansion of it was pretty neat. He said this thing where, so it's a complete random occurrence. You know, we can't say that there was a reason or not. We can't say that there's something generating it from the outside or from the end, whatever. But he said it in a really cool way. It's just like, all the universe does is it keeps making more and more rearranged decks, you know, like deck of playing cards. So it just keeps throwing out all these decks that are either coming out like all in order, all in blah, 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 blah. Like, I guess like these are all different infinities, right? Mm-hmm. Which kind of like, I can't see like the torus now, the torus view of the shape of the universe. Now I'm starting to see it more like I did as a kid, where it was just like, it's just a flat disc that's just going this way. Because all I did was take that stupid fucking diagram that's usually like this, and it usually looks like a cornucopia of like the expansions or whatever. Mm-hmm. I didn't like that. It doesn't, like, even as a kid, it's like, oh, that doesn't make sense. Just make it a big giant disc that goes this way, because everything's on a fucking what's it called? A planar fucking whatever. Like everything in our solar system is on a similar planar whatever that thing's called.
Equatorial plane is what that's called.
Yeah, right. And so like there's literally no point in thinking about the universe being it probably is bottomless top to bottom, but there is no top to bottom, left or right. It's just it's everywhere. Right. So the best way to start looking at things in space is the equatorial plane, because that's pretty much where everything is going to be traveling, like spaceships and whatever. It's just going to be along those corridors, because if not, your shit's going to get lost anyway.
Well, yeah. And
would that be the theory of chaotic inflation by Andrew Lind?
I don't know. Andrew Lind, is that the guy that you were talking about? Chaotic inflation?
Yeah, probably. Is he old guy, bald guy, big nose? I don't
know. One of the things is the like the toroid to flat comparison, right? Like the torus is one of the best visual descriptions of many elements of the universe. Yeah. But I personally think that it would be a really bad way to look at the physical universe in forms of its spatiality, right? Yeah. And when it comes down to vector is really where I start looking, because it begs the question, what exists beyond, say, like the gravity of an object, right? Yeah. Like, say, if you were to go to the edge of the universe and the very last object, and it has a gravity well. Yeah. Well, what exists after that? Right? I'm not too sure, because what actually the universe is, as far as a fabric is concerned, is it's a whole bunch of relationships, really. Yeah. Right. So in my theory, nobody knows about this, but in my model of the universe, there's two things: there's time and there's relationships. That's it. Everything that we know is a product of time and relationships. But with space itself is got to be some kind of a vector, right?
Right.
At least that's how we perceive it. But is it a vector? Is it really a vector? So again, if you go to the last object at the edge of space and you go past its gravity well, is there some vector that you can travel through outside that? Or is the vector that we call space itself a product of the relationship of all these objects creating these tensors in the flat fabric that we call space-time, right? In which point, space-time as we know it isn't actually even a thing. It is simply just the relationship between those objects and the tension that they create. Like, if you go between stars, you're still within the gravity well of some larger object.
Yeah.
Or you're within the well of the interface of two systems. You're in the fuzzy boundary, as they'd call it. Or, like, at that point, there would be no empty space at all. It would only be the relationship between the bodies distorting. Again, it appears to be distorting a fabric, but does the fabric exist outside of them? If you were to take away all the bodies in the universe, all the stars and planets and shit, would that space-time fabric exist in the same volume as it does today? Or is that volume actually a product of being stuffed with stuff that makes it constantly expand, right? Like I think science, they would say that dark matter and dark energy are also part of the expanding universe. And so there's a multiplier. It's not just the known matter, this visual matter. It's also the unknown or invisible matter that's constantly being expanded upon. And that's, again, it's like part of the stuff.
It's
right?
Spooky stuff, because like when I you've said that a couple of times, like a while ago, about like invisible light, and I was like, I was so stupid. It should have hit me right away. I should be like, oh, like X-rays and gamma rays or whatever, like the really, really small fucking high energy shit that's too small to be detected by the eyeball or whatever, right? But then
not invisible, but then there's even further.
Exactly, which is what I was thinking. I was like, is there such thing as invisible light? And then as soon as I looked that up, it's like, yeah, kind of, but not really. Like you can get like a photon to be squished down really, like, I guess like the Planck length, because anything after the Planck length, there's no meaningful ways of interacting with that information. Like there might be things underneath that, but
I think light's a bad word. We shouldn't be even saying invisible light, because if you're talking about invisible light, then you're talking about something like an X-ray or a gamma ray or a beta ray. Yeah. If you're talking about invisible material like dark matter and dark energy, then it's not actually, it doesn't have a photon. So light's a word that we use, and light's all invisible.
Yeah.
Always light's always invisible
until it hits something.
So you're actually only seeing the reflection of light.
Right. So okay, let me say this better then. Should I just call it electromagnetic energy?
Maybe, if that's what you're talking about, right? Like if you're talking about dark energy, then that's dark energy, and we don't know what it is, but it's that invisible energy factor where every atom consumes more energy than it has. or than it appears to have, and so we say, okay, well, there must be some other energy source in the universe that is contributing to the spin of everything and to the constant torsion and to the constant motion and constant changing and constant activity.
Then perhaps that there are pockets. And I'm using that word very loosely because I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. I just know enough words to string it together that makes it sound like I do. But
welcome to the Questioning Everything podcast.
but perhaps there are pockets of the universe that like the physics is still relatively the same, but not right. Which would maybe help explain dark energy, dark antimatter, or dark matter, whatever. Because, like, still in space, but not black holes and not invisible light. Like quasars, right? Giant, super fucking massive stars, essentially, right? But stars isn't a good enough name for these motherfuckers. You gotta call them suckers a quasar, right? Those things are so fucking big that they create these particles that the physicists call strange particles or strange energy or whatever, that just like because the pressure is so heavy on the nuclei or whatever inside of those things, that like it just creates these, it essentially it breaks our standard model, or it breaks quantum physics or thermodynamics.
Okay.
Yeah, it breaks because it just does weird things, and then that's as far as it goes. Like, we don't know what they do. It's just the environment is such that it creates these really weird particles. So
that's neat.
It is neat, but I don't know. Everything is so far away, and all we can do is look at it and see what the chemical composition of it is. We can't really tell what the gravity is like in other places, or what the general physics are like. Can gravity go? Can gravity be? This just hit me from earlier in the conversation. Out of phase. Can the force, the fundamental forces in one part of the universe, go out of phase with another part of the universe and create dissonance? I don't know. It's
not a bad idea, and I don't think physics is going to change or anything like that. But what will change is that the products of phenomenon are subject to factors, and if the factors change, then the products change. It's like saying that, like in a system with less gravity, or in a system where everything's spread out more, things are going to be different. Time's going to be different. There's going to be a whole bunch of things that are not comparable to this system, right? So it's like looking back at the dinosaurs, or looking back pre-dinosaurs, and you try to imagine, okay, well, what would they have been doing? Like, let's look at the North American. You find dinosaur bones in North America. So if you're in Arkansas and you find that bone, you try to think about it and say it's 200 million years ago. Well, if you try to imagine what the dinosaur was doing in terms of modernity, then you're looking at it wrong. The temperature of the earth was different. The carbon dioxide was different. It was more humid. The North America was actually two mountain ranges at that point: the Appalachian and the Rocky Mountains. What we have is the center of North America, and the coast, the west coast, wasn't even out of the ocean yet. The continent itself is like 900 kilometers north of where it is today, northeast or something like that, right? So the continent's not in the same position. It doesn't look the same. The contents of the atmosphere are different. The temperature and the humidity is different. The whole world is different, right? And so trying to imagine what a dinosaur was up to in context of today simply is not equivalent. And if you go to some other part of the universe, say a more distant period, if that's what you're doing, because that's also a weird thing, but you got to imagine the further away you're getting, the further distant you're getting. We've got this paradox that we can't get away from. We can never see far away right now. We'll never see far away right now. We only see far away at that time. So even if we're trying to map some space, time, and understand stuff, then we have to be able to understand this perspective that if we're looking at a really far away period, is it closer to the center of the beginning of all things, closer to the center of our galaxy? Because if it is, then what's the speed of light? Is the speed of light different? Because the speed of light in a vacuum changes when the volume of a vacuum changes. If you have a metric volume, a metric volume of universe back then would be like 10 metric volumes of universe now. So that same light beam that goes through 10 boxes, that's how we calculate the speed.
Right.
Would now go that same speed only going through one. Right. So it could be 10 times faster, light, which means time could be running 10 times faster at that point of the universe, which means maybe as we go further back in time, we're actually adding more time. It could be like a non-linear grade where the further back we go, the further back we have to calculate it. So 1 million years back could be a 1, but then 1 billion years back might have to be calculated as a 1.1. That's equivalent to a 1, because it's literally getting, it's
more
morphing.
Volume.
Yeah, it's getting more volume as it gets towards us. Because getting less volume back in time, so the time would literally be different. The calculation of time, the calculation of the light speed, everything like that would change.
Is volume being filled in with the quantum stuff, or is the volume just the area?
I would guess that it's both.
Yeah.
I would guess that the volume of quantum stuff is growing, but the volume of photons and neutrons and electrons is also growing, right? But the thing is that we've got this, matter cannot be created nor destroyed.
Right.
So at some point you have to have a potential, and then at another point you have to have a manifest or an actual, and you have to draw from one to the other.
Right. Which is the kind of like the loop that you've been describing with the torus, right? Like once stuff gets to the fringe, to the outside where entropy is way the hell up, it somehow makes a loop around and comes back into the center.
Well, absolutely, because once it gets to the point where entropy has completely and utterly annihilated all appearances, because that's really what it is that everything in the universe is nothing that's been assembled to look like something, right? And if you stretch it out far enough and separate the electrons and the molecules and the atoms, then it suddenly starts looking like nothing again. It just suddenly starts being a bunch of potential stuff, were it to be cooled or compressed or whatever. Yeah. Which is also really weird with entropy, because with entropy, not only are you getting to the edge of the universe where things cool, where they would normally contract, but because it's constantly expanding, it's something that is in its least energetic state, where it would normally be contracted, but it's spread out so far, and it's just simply a non-energetic bit of matter that, again, now suddenly gets fucking annihilated, turns back into just simply potential. Now at the very beginning of the universe, when things start forming from this quantum soup, quantum stuff starts assembling itself to the point where it creates photons, which then can degrade into the electron and neutrino, that sort of shit. That's now the end has reached the beginning, because there's no difference, right? And that's where you get your torus. Once something's been completely annihilated, it becomes the same material that which it was created from initially.
And it's just forever.
Well, that's just it. It's that now it's in a different position in space, but there comes to a point where these particles are no longer spatial, right?
Yeah.
So we have this, we have a fascination with spatial particles, and I think that's what fucks with a lot of physicists is trying to make everything spatial.
Yeah.
But suddenly, spatiality becomes squirrely when the particles break down and get stretched to the point where they're no longer structurally three-dimensional. They're no longer limited to the laws of these three-dimensional physics laws.
Do you think that these guys would benefit from the culture growing, taking DMT or whatever? I personally haven't tried it yet, but the one thing that I hear when investigating it from other people is, regardless of what you see or whatever, most people generally end up in the first part of their trip in like what feels like a dome, right? Most people describe like they're inside of a it feels like they're underground. You know what I mean?
I've never heard that.
You never heard that? I've heard it so many times.
It's always mandalas. You start flying through mandalas.
Yeah.
Yeah. You get it. It depends on the point too. You have to really get that. If you can, you have to get that third dose in.
Yeah, for sure.
And then it's entirely involuntary. After that, you have no control, right?
Yeah, it's just here it is. Woo!
But I've never heard of like a cave or something. It's usually very expansive, and there's geometry, circular mandala, like Buddhist mandalas, geometry, like fucking the Mayan calendar type shit.
Yeah, or the
changing and morphing,
and the Godhead picture kind of thing from like Tool's album,
Alex Gray.
Yeah.
But really more like mandala-y, like very much simple symbols that start to move, and usually you see them. Something like that is like 85% of the time I've heard that.
Yeah,
and experienced it too. It's pretty wild.
I guess what I was trying to figure is like, I know how I know a lot of people have a hard time visualizing things just in general. Like they have an imagination, but if you ask them to describe what they're picturing or whatever, they can't really say it back to you. But they know what they're picturing, but they can't really like recall it. Like I've been experimenting with people because like I can picture shit really well, and it blows my mind that like when I'm like describing something out and people are just like I don't follow. I'm like, oh. So I'm curious that like if people like mathematicians or physicists or whatever have like a brilliant mind to crunch numbers, do the equations, know the formulas, but if they're not getting any kind of a visualization, like to me that's gotta be like,
that would be depending on who they are, right? That's person to person.
Yeah.
Being able to visualize stuff isn't something that's guaranteed to people. It's some people can, some people can't. Which that's actually one of the things that set me off on trying to figure out that model theory in the beginning, was the whole idea that humans are multidimensional.
Yeah.
Right? In the sense that the difference between us and a rock is multiple degrees of freedom. Free will and emotion, and you have a sex drive that's totally separate from you. Like it's not separate, but it's certainly got a mind of its own. There's all these dimensions to people, and then we also have this ability to imagine a pink beach ball, and then imagine that pink beach ball being bounced on the nose of a seal.
Yeah.
We can imagine that. And it's like imagination appears or has every appearance to require a vector, much like space. And it's a vector that is indetectable, right? But when I see a pink beach ball on the nose of a seal, I'm really seeing it.
Yeah.
And my brain thinks I'm seeing it as well, right? So where does this happen? Where does this exist? Because multiple dimensions do not exist. I don't believe in string theory multiple dimensions. I don't believe in any multiple dimensions. I think it's demonstrably hogwash at this point in our understanding of how things work. I think there is simply only 3 in time, right? But that was where it started to be like, well, how is this even possible? How is this possible that we can have such a multidimensionality? And that's when I started looking at the relationships, because consciousness itself is a relationship, but consciousness is a relationship that an observer has with itself, where every time the observer has an output, the output swings around back into itself, and it observes itself doing, right? Something that doesn't have that feedback loop will function out of instinct and will function out of impulse, but they don't watch themselves functioning, right?
They're not self-conscious.
They're not
self-aware.
Exactly. So there's various feedback loops that allow animals to like know they're hungry, know they're thirsty, know they're tired, all these things. But so the animal kingdom's based off of these feedback loops in small animals and big animal, everything like that. But we have these feedback loops on feedback loops. It's a far more complicated version where it's like a system on a system that can observe itself, which is strange. Again, deer and moose and bears probably have it. Dogs have it to a degree. Cats probably not. They seem to be fairly fucking stupid. But
but shit, they kill mice pretty good.
But they do, and they're cute, and they're cuddly.
So,
but those feedback, that complex feedback loop is actually a larger structure. So that's when I started looking at structures, because the type of thing that makes an animal instinctual and impulsive, and it be able to protect itself, protect its young, feed itself, all these sorts of things, is a feedback loop of being able to monitor its own system. Now that system, if you look at it, is actually a very complex system. It's an animal, it's an organism, and we're very complex, right? We have evolved from a single cell to a multi-cell organism, sponge to the fish, to the amphibian, to the lizard, to the, mammal. And it's incredibly complex at this point. We are more than a structure. We are several structures working in similitude with each other, working in tandem with each other. That's really what a multi-celled organism is. That's also what an animal is if you look at the relationship between its brain, its central nervous system, and its main organs. The organs and the brain and the central nervous system all work in tandem to regulate the organism completely. And they are, again, a series of impulses. Those impulses are built off of those organs, which are structures. So they're a certain thing that has a certain job. It's like a particular shaped Lego piece. And if you put a bunch of particularly shaped Lego pieces together in an arranged series, a particular array, much like a crystal or a geometric pattern, then those structures start to work together. They start to form a relationship, and they work in tandem with each other, and they work in cooperation with each other to form then what I call a superstructure. So now you have structures which are very simple bits like organs and or even single-celled organisms or whatever that have come together that work in tandem, creating this superstructure, which is like a crystal array of structures, right? And that superstructure in our system creates these multiple dimensions. They facilitate these multiple dimensions because they have a higher array of feedback loops. We've got a unique crystalline shape, you could say, that is a result of our structures, our internal structures working in this similitude, this harmony, and that's what people in the past have called the Merkaba, or the star tetrahedron.
Yeah.
The Kabbalah is based off of it, obviously. Right? Yeah. So,
sure, it'd be nice to figure out how to manifest one and just start getting the fuck out of here. Woo!
You've already got it, though. That's just it. Is that we've already got it. As people mature, they have more or less access to different regions of their personality and their self, their brain, right? When we're young, we don't have a lot of access to ourselves, and we don't even know ourselves because we haven't yet learned by example who we are. Because that's, again, part of our feedback loop as a conscious being, is we're learning who we are by being who we are. All of our being becomes this encyclopedia that we call who we are, because it's demonstrated now. We're no longer looking at who we are as a result of like what ideas we might have or what opinions we have on stuff. We literally have something demonstrable. So even if you're a good person in your head,
you might not be that great out where.
Yeah, if you've been an asshole,
oh shit,
then you're actually an asshole.
Yeah.
Right.
What was that saying? If everyone around you is an asshole, you're probably an asshole.
Yeah. Absolutely, because it's demonstrable that that's really what you are. We show ourselves who we are by being something, and we pick up on it. We're sensitive to that. We're conscious of that. Lower life animals aren't conscious of it. There's no reason that like they just haven't. They haven't evolved that function in their brain. In fact, there's completely different systems in other animals where they share.
I don't know. Have you not seen Fievel Goes West? Those mice know exactly what's up. Yeah. Sorry.
I started looking at it in my 20s, and honestly to God, it's inconclusive to say the least, but I started looking at the array that's produced by the organs in the body, and how that array compares to, say, a cat or a dog and I did come to some conclusions, like the understanding that I can't remember what the fuck I was talking about.
Sorry, yeah, I'm getting silly.
Do you remember where I was leading up to that? No.
Roll back the tape.
It's essentially, the long story short, is the array that different animals have produce different states of consciousness. And what I'm starting to discover is that all animals, their consciousness isn't just a result of simple brain, but it's a result of how their brain and their system, their organs and their central nervous system work in tandem to produce not only a sense consciousness, which is their central nervous system, connected to their skin, connected to their ocular system and their sense, their smell and their ears,
Yeah.
But also their feedback loops. They've got hunger. They've got a vagus nerve type system, right? They've got different feedback loops exist in our systems just to tell us like if our tires are flat and shit like that, right? So you got your tires are low system, your battery, your transmission fluid, all that sort of stuff. We've got those. We've got detection systems within our greater system that are feedback loops that not only exist, but exist in such a way that we are wired to be aware of them. So that, and of course other animals have those same feedback loops. They just don't have the driver in the cab that humans have evolved, which is the feedback of all feedback loops, the feedback loop of all feedback loops. And then even then, as a human being, you have to then realize that when the people said back in the day that we are created in the image of God, they're smarter than we are. Let's just assume they're smarter than they are. Let's just assume that they know something or they're talking about something that's a little bit more interesting than you just don't write it off.
Yeah. Don't just take it for metaphoric value. Take it for.
We have layers within us of feedback loops. We have layers of drivers that go deeper and deeper and deeper. Oh, you're getting a phone call.
Yeah. Hold on a minute. Nope.
Not today, Satan. We aren't just a driver in a cab. We aren't just a mastermind or a meta mind. If you think you know the driver in the cab, then you still got some fun to come, because you're not that driver yet.
Yeah.
And then when you become the next driver, you're still not the real driver yet. You think you're going to be the driver of your car. You got a lot of people to go through before you find who's really the driver of this vehicle, right? Because there's onion skins, and we are, again, built off these feedback loops where once you get past the first skin, probably through meditation or through drugs or however the fuck you're going to do it, there is a world, there's a playland of shit to do in there. It's the idea is, like, just imagine if the Bible was actually like a guidebook. Like, imagine if people actually took it like a fucking guidebook rather than like a learn how to judge your neighbor.
Yeah.
Right? Like, first of all, you're never judging anybody but yourself. Every time you judge somebody, you're just judging yourself. So, yeah. But imagine if it was a guidebook, because there's tons of parables. There's tons of lessons on varied human experiences, some of which are more interesting than others. So suffice to say, if a person can like get to the point where they're in some form of a chemognosis from drugs, mushrooms or something, or they're in some form of a meditational gnosis because they've done a lot of meditation, or they're exploring, or there's the Bible said that the kingdom of heaven is at hand. And the kingdom of heaven was never supposed to be something that you waited to die for.
Yeah.
The kingdom
you
of
create, you manifest it from your own relationships.
You don't even and whether you manifest it or not, whether somebody manifested it before you, it's really hard to tell, because again, it doesn't appear that the kingdom of heaven is a thing. It doesn't appear that it's a place. It appears much like how planets create space-time by existing
and warping it. And
not whatever. Warping it. They create it by being there. Because that's what I'm saying. If you were to take all the planets and all the stuff out of the universe, would it still be there?
Yeah.
Would it be there of the same size, or are those things pushing it out? Is that vector essentially what the fuck am I fucking forgetting words now? Is it emergent? Is it an emergent property of things? So much like that, the spiritual plane, and I'm just going to start talking shit, just warning, shit talk time is beginning. The spiritual plane doesn't exist, but there's something, a multidimensional something that is forced into existence by people, is really what it appears, right? So it's been forced into existence by people before us, and it's been forced into a form of existence, much like a pond that gets rippled by a rock, and then you can leave and the ripple stays. There's an echo or a ripple effect, a persistency to what they've created. That's what they've pushed into existence by occupying their multidimensionality in life and creating some kind of an echo, creating some kind of a ripple that other people can then hear. Yeah. They can hear, they can see, whatever you want to fucking say, right? Well, if we're going to use the analogy of a ripple and an echo, then that's, yeah. And so this is the kingdom of heaven. The kingdom of heaven is a layer of existence that is simultaneous to this one. It's not outside of the three dimensions. It's a product of superstructures. in 3 dimensions, producing the appearance or the phenomena of higher dimensions, right?
Yeah.
When you imagine that pink ball on the seal's nose, you are producing an emergent, temporary, multiple dimension that's actually just formed from your own series of organs, your brain and your heart and your central nervous system and your guts and things producing that image in your mind, right?
Yeah.
But it is to you a tangible, multiple dimensional experience because you could see it, right? Listen to these 3 words: dog, run, fast. Now, replay that in your head right now.
I see a greyhound giving shit. Like
just the words. Just hear the words: dog, run, fast. Now, hear me say that in your head now. Right? So how did you do that? How did you do that?
Because I remembered hearing you say it, and then I just played it back.
Exactly. So now we can establish that when we create things in our own multidimensional system, we're actually using the memory of the experience in the neurology, both in the brain as well as in the central nervous system and organs, to reproduce it, right? To reproduce it as if it existed in the 3-dimensional environment that we have now, right? Now, and if you were to get really high or get really tired, an imagined voice, or a voice that's actually real, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, right? The brain to the brain, it's cognitively identical, right? So how, I lost what I was saying there. The structure of a temporary fabric that only we can experience, at least initially, is observable. It occurs for all of us. And how? Is it because we're multidimensional? Or is it because we, as this 3-dimensional, 4-dimensional person, have the ability, evolutionarily, to reproduce scenarios within ourselves? Right? Because that seems to be like an evolutionary trait. We have the ability to reproduce scenarios we've experienced, or to create a scenario that we haven't yet experienced. Whether it's like you arguing with your teacher, because you lost that argument back in 9th grade and now you can fucking win it. So you rehab it in your head. Or it's even what if it's a physical altercation where somebody gets the better of you and you work out a way to turn that around, and you think, oh shit, I could actually do this move and get on top, and then I'd reverse it. Right? So we've got this instinct towards being able to replay scenarios, or to be able to imagine scenarios, and very, very, very vividly in both real life and in dreams. And the question is begged, and it's never been answered by science: where is this occurring? Yes, it's occurring as brain activity. Yes, we get that. But when you can imagine something, where are you imagining it?
Is it the neurons firing? Right?
Well, the neurons firing are going to be firing anyway. But you can't let one semantic get in the way of another, because that's like a physicist and a biologist arguing about a plant, because they're both right. Domestic stuff.
Sorry. I had something that I wanted to ask. Volition. Is volition the same thing as
willpower, essentially?
Or there's a specific word, agency. Is that all kind?
I don't imagine agency to mean the same thing myself. Agency I find to be more of a capability, or more of a capacity, if you have the agency to do something.
Yeah.
Volition is a trippy thing, like in the most superficial way, it would just be willpower, like you have to have the willpower to do something, or it's the volatility of a person rather than just doing nothing. You are an active, volatile agent. You're a change-making agent. That's really what a volatile compound is in chemistry, right? It's something that causes other things to change and reacts quickly or reacts readily with other things. If something's non-volatile, you can mix it with stuff and nothing will happen. If it's volatile, like a peroxide or a bleach or any kind of oxidizer or an acid or something like that, then it's going to react, or anything that's like readily evaporated, like volatile organic compounds, right? But in the terms that I would use it, we are programmed, we are conditioned, we are autonomic beings. Almost everything we do, 99.99999, almost 100% of everything we do is the product of previous programming, previous conditioning. Even if we think that we're not, we're pre-programmed robots.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Self-replicating AI.
Yeah. We're pre-programmed robots. And then we aren't very conscious of it, right? Once the feedback loops start, then the feedback loops can also be ignored. Somebody can see themselves, or they can have a meta experience, and they can actually get uncomfortable from it. So there's a lot of people in this world who are not conscious of their feedback. They're not conscious of it. In fact, they don't want to be conscious of it personally.
This specifically, what you're saying right now is exactly why I suggested relationships, because of a specific relationship I have that, for the most part, it's the best, but some scenarios this relationship puts me into panic mode. Like I had a panic attack 2 days ago, and part of myself trying to get, work through it, so I'm not like this really shitty, depressed person for the next couple of weeks, was to like start talking to people. Like I talked to you, and I was just like, hey, I want to talk about relationships, because I don't remember if I got into it or not, but like I needed some help getting myself creating a positive feedback loop on this specific matter. But then I was like, I want to explore that more. Right. And volition is one of the things, like, for me, one of the things like I hate the most in the world is when someone fucks with me, even if it's like innocent, right? Like I ask, oh, I like the food that you just made, what's in it? And then someone gives me a smile and it's just like, oh, it's my secret. I'm like, no, literally, what did you do? And I try to create a conversation, and then they're just stuck at the joke, stuck at the like, I don't really care about telling you. And then it's just like, okay, I gotta go somewhere else.
Like, funny.
Yeah. Oh my.
Try not to give it all away, because people like me will fucking just dig at you.
Oh, I don't know. Okay, fuck. Yeah, but I don't know. Like, one of the things I've been many of the things I've been learning about myself is like, I don't care, and I'm not afraid of the same things that most people are, like general people. Like, it's gonna sound like common sense, but like most people I've met and had connections with have had no problem betraying me for no reason. Like, I didn't even have to do anything to deserve the betrayal, but I've experienced betrayal, and that fucks me up like hardcore. Most people are just like, yeah, so what? That they're a dick. That sucks that you had that thing between you two, but like, whatever, walk on. Like, I can't walk on, because like, this is someone that like I want to know for like a really long time. So like, how can I reconcile the betrayal? and being like I don't care if I can trust the person or not. Again, that's not the problem. Like if they did it to me once, they'll do it to me again, and sure as shit it has happened. But I don't know, it's just weird things. Like most people, like I feel like because it feels like the world, the global consciousness, most people are able to disassociate in such a weird way, not in a way like where they're like their heads in the clouds, but they're just like, I think you said, like they're not conscious or of their own. They're not self-aware.
Of course not. Yeah, that's the problem. And when it's on an internet level too, then they don't have any negative feedback, right? Yeah. In case people aren't aware, negative feedback isn't really a bad thing. Negative feedback in like math and physics is a correction. It's a correction function. So positive feedback is when the river is allowed to flow in the direction that it would like to flow in, and negative feedback is when the river is directed to flow in a slightly different way. And it's not necessarily like, again, people become so they take things personally and they get wrapped up in their ego, but it's, negative feedback is actually a corrective function. And people, they try to avoid negativity too much, even in the forms of relationships. Like sometimes in order to have a better relationship, something negative has to manifest. And it's unfortunate, but if something negative is between people, then the only way to get it out is to get it out. Yeah. Really, right? Yeah. And so then there's, whatever. It's not always comfortable. It's not always great. I think most of the time we just rather abandon the relationship than deal with something that's that uncomfortable. It's just easier to walk away from it than deal with it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But there's a problem in the world right now. And I think everybody can see it. And there's a real dislocation between everybody in comparison to different periods of time. So if you look in periods of history, you've got a lot more unity between people, unity in the form of religion, or unity in the form of some kind of a unified belief, like or Freemasonry, or something.
Yeah.
And it's allowed people to form bonds of trust and to make rules of conduct. Like we all know that we want this and that, but we're all going to sacrifice it for the greater good, and we're going to bond and be unified in it. Or, like just even like being able to trust that people aren't going to lie or backstab you.
Yeah.
There's no standards by which we're asked to live, really. There's no, like in Freemasonry, I obviously can't give away details, but there's a real, let's get on the same level ground before we can move forward. We have to establish equality, and we have to establish confidence and trust. Right?
Is it fair to ask what? Oh, I guess you're answering this. Like, what where did the free? I'm trying not to like ask information because you just said you're not going to give it out. But
well, no, just not specific details, right?
No. Do you start from the weakest link, like the weakest moral, or and that's a fucked up thing, because like, how do you define who has the weakest morals, or like where do you establish the line for everyone to?
No, it's much like any other fraternity. There's a start, and when you start there, at least in the fraternity, you are at level zero, right? You're at ground zero, and then you go through, and eventually you're equal. The point of whether it's Freemasonry or whether it's the bar mitzvah and the relationships between Jews in a family or in a close quarter, or it's Mennonites, or it's even the way tribalism works in our day and age, because these days everybody's gotten really tribal and they pack together, and the tribalism's okay, but the people are shitty. The quality of people these days is so shitty that even in a good tribe, like if you find a good tribe of, let's just say, people that have been victimized tend to be better people than people who haven't been victimized. It's just the way it is, right? Because they have a relationship, they relate, right?
Yeah.
But even today, people that are victimized are going to be really shitty. You're going to go into the LGBTQIA, totally shitty. You go into the Jewish Semitic community, really shitty, at least in my opinion. A lot of really weird double standards, strange superiority belief systems, strange power games, and especially today in like the LGBTQIA community, where like if you're we're not talking about like Bob who happens to be gay, right? Yeah. We're talking about like online activism and shit like that, where you're never good enough, or you end up getting a lot of attack methodologies where, in order to be an activist, you attack people. Yeah. Just really shitty personality stuff.
Don't take my rights away from taking other people's rights away. Yeah. I don't know if that was something that you posted, but like that one, like, I don't know where I saw it, but recently I was just like, what the fuck exactly?
Yeah. If I was to make a commune and I was to try to pull people that were honest, that I know if I ask them a question, whatever they tell me is going to be the truth. Yeah. Right? Even if they're not comfortable with it, they're still going to tell me the truth. That they are going to work to become the person that they would want to be, and just simply put, right? It's not a religious aspiration. It's not even asking a lot of anybody. It's just saying that everybody needs to mature, get to an age where they've grown the fuck up. They can be reliable. They can be counted on. They're responsible. They can be trusted with your family and your money and your possessions. They can put in a good hard day's work with you, and at the end of the day, right? Like if you wanted to build a commune, how many people do you know that you could pull together and say these people are genuinely good, solid, strong, trustworthy, people? If you go to a Mennonite community, literally you'll find some. If you go to a Christian community, as much as we might make fun of fucking people who believe in Noah's Ark, you're still going to find people that 100% will be loyal to you. Yeah. They will die with you. They will die with you. Right? Yeah. And that is more important than being conscious. It's more important than being woke. It's more important than, as far as making a life, as far as people in a society, making a future, making babies, making houses, making schools, making civilization, making comfort and technology, being a good, solid, fucking dependable, trustable person with a good heart who's not fucked up, is far better than somebody who can like quote the Bhagavad Gita or something. Like I'd take that way before some alleged spiritual person. Yeah. Just a fucking normal, good person. And that's what we're missing out on in society. And I don't know what to do. I don't think Freemasonry is the answer anymore, because I think people are too stupid, to be honest with you. I think they're too daft to be able to appreciate the subtleties. They need something that's more obvious. They need hammer on head, like when they're watching a TV show, they want the narrator to describe what's happening to them, because they can't just get it by seeing it and so this is the society that we live with, and that's where we need something like Christianity that's a new and improved version, that's more believable, but that's just like a spoon-fed, here's how to be a good person, don't lie, don't cheat people. How about let's make that a trend?
I think it's called atheism.
But it's not, unfortunately, because atheism is an almost like an amoral trap. Yeah. Right? So like if we say that atheism is what we stand for, then maybe atheism's fine. But if you start to dig around in atheism's actually dominated by people who think very, very, very differently. Very differently. Like, have you read Ayn Rand?
A little bit. I haven't read it, but I've, seen excerpts of it and people talk about her.
Yeah, her.
Sorry.
Yeah. A lot of my like cold, hard, negative realism is very similar to Ayn Rand.
Yeah.
Right. But at the same time, that existentialist opinion, that they'd call me a religious fanatic for believing in like the squirreliness of the universe and believing in the relationships that we have with things that we don't understand, things that you can only intuit your relationship with the universe as a whole, but we have one, right? And so I consider myself to be religious. So I actually identify as it, but to an atheist, I would definitely be religious. Because they'd be like, yeah, no, this disqualifies you from atheism. This disqualifies you from. It's like, but to a Christian, I'd be an atheist, right? I get to sit in that perfect little middle zone. Same as on the political spectrum, lefties would call me a right wing, and right wingers would call me a lefty, because I don't satisfy either generalization. I'm actually the opposite to them of what they generalize themselves as, no matter who it is. So it's a fun position to be in, but. Yeah. No, atheism, I think for the most part, most of the atheists that I know would represent what it is you're talking about. So it's just the extreme that is almost the reason why I don't identify as an atheist. Because if you hear an atheist's version of the world, it's like libertarianism. If I talk to a conservative, they're like, oh, you're a libertarian. But if I talk to a libertarian, it's absolutely not mistakable. I am not a libertarian. Oh. Right. I like if I was crazy, like I drank water with lead in it for enough years, then I might become a libertarian where like my most fanatical ideas would suddenly become prominent. Yeah. Because that's what libertarians have. They have really weird, radical ideas about stuff. It's not like,
it's not reform. It's the complete opposite. It's just like
it's weird. It's like it's not 1750 classical liberalism, right? Which is really, but yeah. Anyway, fucking politics.
I thought
lost. Don't stop the podcast now. We'll stop talking about it.
No, I'll go back to the atheism thing, because like I thought I was being cute when I was writing my little panelist story, that I was trying to write atheism but with a pantheon, essentially. So like poly I think it's called polytheism or whatever, where everything has something like that. But I was trying
everything is God.
Yeah, exactly. I was trying to like, because that's my personal belief. Like I think we are the God, like we are the AI, like we probably are the only things in this fucking universe, or at least in this chunk of it, that we can effectively affect, right? So it's not our job or our duty or the purpose of our existence, but we might as well, and this is my straight personal belief, it's like we might as well go to Mars. We might as well figure out how to do Dyson spheres. We might as well figure out how to push the sun into a better region so that we don't end up sucked into our supermassive black hole in the center of the thing. We might as well, hey, screw it. Maybe let's figure out how to stop the sun from going red giant. Wow.
Or just move stars.
Yeah. Like, why not? Mm-hmm. Why not? Like, why not be that which you already think you are in the first place? Like people who wrote the Bibles and all of the other religious scripts that came before had to have come to a realization. It's like, oh, I am there. I think, therefore I am. I think of
Descartes.
God. Yeah, I think of God. Therefore, I must be God. Like,
I think it was definitely more complex than that for that one.
Because that's sure. Like
that's Hebrew, where they're trying to figure out they're trying to figure out the math and the geometry of consciousness and of existence, and they've looked at they've looked at that Merkaba, and And they've probably, much like myself, looked at different life forms and realized that they actually have different crystalline structures to their consciousness array, or the array of relationship between the organs of brains and spine that creates the conscious emergent consciousness, and realized that the other thing is that most people, they just use the term God and they think it's aloof. The term God actually has a specific meaning. And we are created in the image of it. It is what it is. So there's the principles, there's the math formulas, and we have been assembled with these math formulas. But not only that, we've been assembled with the most sophisticated crystal array that we know of, called the Merkaba, that facilitates not only sense awareness and self-consciousness, but self-consciousness in this strange onion skin where we have conscious awareness, self-awareness, supra-awareness, and then supra-awareness. That's usually described in like concentric circles or something in mysticism or whatever like that, where if you look at the Kabbalah, the Ein Sof is, you've got nothings. You've got levels of nothing.
Yeah, that's where I like to hang out.
In chaos, right?
Nothing. Woo! Yeah.
Well, it's really where, at some level, you've got like a Lego, and the Lego itself is built up of atoms, right? Right. So to the Lego, the atoms are chaos. They are a nothing. They are a naught. The atoms are a naught, and the Lego is. Yeah. But when you create a spaceship out of the Lego, the spaceship is now the thing, and the Lego piece themselves are the knots.
Yeah, wow.
They're the nothing.
That is dope.
They're the chaos that Lego spaceship was created from. And so you can say, well, what's in the chaos? And somebody will say, oh, well, there's like a 6-piece and a 4-piece and a long skinny piece. These are quarks, up and down quarks, neutrinos, shit like that.
Red ones, green ones, blue ones.
Absolutely. Yeah. And they're upside down, they're right side up, they're left-handed, they're right-handed, whatever they happen to be. These are the subatomic particles. But to the spaceship, those are nothing. Those would be represented as a zero or as a concentric circle in a mystic picture. So it's not necessarily like, it's almost like infinities in math. It's not like it's an actual zero or it's an actual state of nothing. It's that compared to the macroscopic image that you're talking about, it is simply an ingredient. Yeah. It's a paint pigment in the painting. All the paint pigments are variants of zero. They're variants of the nothing that becomes the something that is the painting, right? Yeah. Or you could say then that perhaps in this analogy, it would be better that the pigment itself was a nothing. And then the colors of each pigment, each individual pigment would produce the array. And then, the painting itself is the Vishnu, is the Christ, is the atom,
In your opinion, is the universe analog or is it digital? if you were to describe what we experience as this cacophony of geometry and whatever in relationships, just everything everywhere all now right here, does it feel more digital or analog?
Well, it feels more analog, but it's easily perceived as digital, right? Because I perceive everything as being binary. I'm not aware of non-binary as far as the mechanics of how things work in the universe, how mechanics of how we work. I don't mean non-binary as like a gender thing.
Yeah. I was actually about to ask him, we're not talking about that.
No. Honestly, like what animals think of themselves and what other animals they want to fuck is of like zero interest to me. If I meet an animal and they're like, do you want to know who I think I am? No, I don't. I fucking well don't. I got enough on my plate with myself. So I really don't care if an animal thinks that they have a binary something or a non-binary something. It is absolutely, it's just like one big fallacy circus. The moment you get into any human's head, every one of us is a circus of fallacies. And I just don't care. The universe itself is binary.
Yeah.
That I'm confident. The smallest dimensional unit that the universe has itself is a binary unit. There is simply nothing even remotely tangible aside from time as a unified, time is the only singularity. That's it. Anything outside of time is part of binary. And in my model, time is the beginning of the model. A lot of people add time in as, like, say, the fourth dimension, or it's described as a fourth dimension.
You're talking about it as it's the first.
It's the first dimension. In fact, the first dimension is actually a structure that uses time as the variables, but it's actually a structure. Time itself is non-dimensional.
Is it like a voluminous structure? Like, does it have vector? Does it have space already? No. It's just it's an idea. I don't want to. Kind of.
Yeah.
It's like,
I mean, it would exist. It would exist. It's not an idea like a theoretical particle or like a multidimensional particle, because that's just it. Is that a lot of ideas that we use to describe the world use models that
are placeholders.
Yeah, and and the models themselves don't fit into our reality. Like, you'd be like, oh, well, no, this requires a 32 dimensional superstring. Okay, well, that's great, but that doesn't actually fit in our reality.
Yeah.
What I'm talking about fits perfectly in our reality.
Right. So I've really been thinking about, like, since we first started talking about it, like almost a month, maybe more now. Mm-hmm. I've been really just like, how do I look at that? So, like, I started doing like little stupid doodles like this, but that wasn't really doing it for me. That just started making like these little spinner things that's like not really and then I just started thinking about it as like a computer monitor. When you first plug it into to a computer that's off, right? Mm-hmm. And then the usually more newer monitors will kind of go like blip. Like, oh, you plugged me into something, but I'm not getting a feed, right? So I'm kind of thinking about, like, that's how, like, the 1 + 2 + 1 dimensional thing kind of works. Is it's like it's literally like a split moment of a screen. Like, let's say you're looking at it as an outside observer, and the beginning proto universe that you're trying to build and describe with these very very simple, like 1 + 2 + 1 dimensions, is literally just, and then it just starts going. And it's like, the way I would look at it is, it's kind of like film going through the film machine, and it's like every one of those relationships that the first and the between those two dimensions intersecting and then annihilating, as you've been saying, it's literally just, for me, is like a projector trying to project a movie, but there's nothing on the film yet. But as the film keeps going, it starts to create its own picture from nothing. But the film and the projector are there. I don't know if that's useful at all, but I'm trying to, like, think about, like, how. I think
that's the one good way of, and the Hindus loved this too, but one good way that's useful is understanding that the film itself is an illusion.
Yeah. And
it's an illusion of our senses, because it's actually really something that is occurring and then not occurring. It's occurring and then terminating 24 times a second. But we don't register that. We only register it as a seamless, full motion event. Yeah. Right. And really nothing's a seamless, full motion event. Everything is a series of
moments
moments
connected. Yeah,
absolutely, and even a recalculation during everything, right? Each nanosecond, the universe is recalculating whether or not it should change or do something different, or do the same thing that it's, everything's just a series of probabilistic calculations, right? So nothing is real, everything is permitted. But the model's really confusing. Like I said, when I first told you, it gave me a migraine. Either the migraine came as a result of this thinking, or the thinking came as a result of the migraine. I'm not too sure. Like I said to Lucy at the time, it was like I had a virus and it was teaching me something. But the idea, essentially for me, and I think for most people, as far as practicality, it's just how do simple structures within the limits of the dimensions that we know of create the illusions of multiple dimensions, or create the experience of a multiple dimension. And it's kind of like phenomena produced by alleles, in a sense, because we all have similar genes, but the genes are expressed with switches, on-off switches, which are alleles. So you can have somebody with identical genes, but their alleles, or the on-off position of each allele, will be different in them, perhaps, which then produces different phenomena, right? So that's where you have a purple Kush and you have a green Durban poison. Yeah. And they're actually the same genotype. Yeah. But they're a different phenotype, because that genotype can be expressed with multiple phenomena depending on the allele, and the different pattern of allele then produces the different phenomenon from the identical things, right? Losing you.
Not this shit again. Oh, cool. It still works. I just got to re-plug it in.
Oh, yeah. Did it die?
No, it didn't. It didn't die this time. It just sometimes gets a little fucky.
Oh, there you go. Let's get some armpit.
Woo!
Armpits.
That arm boosie.
It's tempting to do this topless because it's so friggin' warm right now.
Oh, dude, I'm in the basement and I was like, when you said like, yeah, wherever you want for promotion or whatever, I'm just like, can it be a hairy chest?
Yeah, exactly. I was wondering if I needed shorts at all.
Yeah. Alleles. Those aren't an physical thing. There's like not a physical thing.
Yeah.
So it's okay. I'm pretty sure it was telomeres or telomeres or whatever.
Those are different.
Yeah, those are different. But you reminded me of that because I probably shouldn't bring it up because it has no relation.
It's the nature of this podcast.
It has no relation to it, but it reminded me of who's the older brother? Is it Brett or Eric?
Eric's the older brother. He's a year older, I believe.
Yeah, so his younger brother, Brett, fucking figured out something pretty interesting. Why are you doing this? Yeah,
he discovered the link between telomeres and
yeah, and I'm not bringing it up to go into the what's it called?
It's a link between lifespan and telomeres.
Yeah, I'm not trying to bring it up to get into the controversy behind it that happened, but fuck that lady.
Oh, the one, yeah.
Yeah.
So what he's talking about is Brett Weinstein he's a molecular biologist or evolutionary biologist on the East Coast in the US, and he discovered that telomeres and lifespan are relative to each other. And then they discovered that mice telomeres are actually really long, even though they have a short lifespan. And so it threw a wrench into his whole theory, and it made his work look weak, until he realized that the mice that they were looking at were all coming from the same laboratory, and they were in fact bred at the laboratory and had been for quite a while, and specifically had really long telomeres for mice, whereas wild mice, their telomere length, which is the telomeres are the very end of your chromosomes. They are basically like the lifespan of the chromosome. So you could almost imagine it like every time your chromosome replicates, it uses a bit of this telomere. And the longer the telomere, the longer the chromosome can replicate. Once the telomere is gone, then the chromosome gets fucked. And so the lifespan of the telomeres and aging are very much linked. Anyway, so then he realized that, yeah, these mice are fucked. Got somebody else to do a study, and they found that, yes, in fact, the mice specifically had long telomeres. Now, rather than publish the study, the person sat on the study, because in the science world, if you have information that you can, introduce, then you get better grant money. So she sat on it and then used it as a way to coincidentally predict what would happen to these other tests in these other tests. So rather than coming clean, anyway, it was a bit of controversy, and she ended up publishing the study in the end. And I don't think that she's a bad person, but
no,
that's just the way. It's just the way it works, right?
Yeah, it's
the competitive nature of trying to run a lab, and rather than basically what the telomere association to these mice meant was that every single study that had been done on mice that tried to test against the mice, try to test against the toxicity or something that's going to lower its life force or its vitality, because of its telomere length, it would have a disproportionately higher resistance to toxicities and to any sorts of deleterious shit. So if you're using these mice to test a pharmaceutical on mammals, you're actually getting skewed data that's going to be skewed towards making the more toxic, as opposed to making them less toxic, because the mice are resistant. But anyway, it's it's definitely different than alleles, but it is an interesting subject. And I think Brett Weinstein is an interesting and unique case where this happens probably thousands of times. And
all the time, yeah.
His is the only one that's ever going to see the light of day, particularly because his brother is radicalized.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So his brother's radical, meaning he's outside of the academic system. He left the academic system like 25 years ago. Yeah. And as a result, he's now a free radical and has the ability to say quite literally whatever the hell he wants.
Yeah. And I like that, but like sometimes like the way he goes about it though, it etches me the wrong way. I'm like, that's exactly probably how people feel about me when I get passionate about something or whatever. Just like, well, that sounds good, but I think you're taking a little bit of liberties there. It's like, fuck yeah, I'm taking liberties when I'm passionate about something. Because part of the reason why I get passionate about something is because I'm trying to be abrasive. I'm trying to, what's the word you say? Be volatile. Because I want to create a reaction. I'm not trying to add to myself. I'm trying to stir up a conversation. Yeah. Because you can't have new shit without a conversation.
Absolutely. And you don't ask a fire to start itself. You fucking throw fire at it until it lights.
We didn't start the fire.
No, it's an interesting story. But yeah, no, with the alleles, I don't know how fucking alleles even relates to much, but I mean, alleles is only a
you said the phenomenon. Word and then all it did was just like, it reminded me of the telomere thing. And I'm just like, telomeres, yeah, I wonder if they're related at all. It's funny how one subject or whatever I just created a real weird relationship in my head where they weren't connected, but
well, they are kind of, because they're both genetical, right?
Yeah.
It's like transposons fit in there as well. And transposons are the basically like little chunks of DNA that get moved around inside our chromosomes almost randomly, and they can literally change. They can mutate our DNA. Right?
Wow.
Yeah, they're just weird little bits that float around. And if they insert themselves in the right or wrong place, creates a mutation. But DNA gets mutated all the time. We don't usually notice because it's usually insignificant, or it's not a very big deal, or for whatever reason it's not passed on because the person dies, or that makes them unattractive to the opposite sex.
Yeah. Well, I can totally think of one mutation that's noticeable, and it hasn't happened that long. The size of our jaws and our mouths. Look at how many people's teeth are fucked up. We used to make the joke, or it's still a joke made about like inbreeding or whatever in the royals, but that was only a handful of people, like of 1%. How do you explain the rest of the world? People are born with fucked up teeth because our mouths and our jaws are way the hell smaller than they were a few thousand years ago, let alone 100,000 years ago or 1,000,000 years ago. We used to have these giant ass fucking chompers to eat whatever, whenever we found it.
Maybe that could also be genetical crossbreeding, right?
Yeah.
Like, say, is that jaw phenomena also prevalent in Africa? Because in Africa we have like the purest sapien samples, whereas in Europe we are Neanderthal mixed with sapien.
Yeah.
Right. And in Asia they're probably erectus mixed with sapien, even though we haven't proved that, and it's probably racist to say that, but it is literally the difference between the peoples of the world is that we interbred between different species.
Right, different species of like pre-human, pre-hominid or whatever.
Yeah, different varieties, I should say. Different
varieties, yeah, because they were all interchangeable, right? It was kind of like how...
They're all the same species, technically, the Neanderthals and sapien.
But the exact same way how we have a diversity in the way we all look and whatever, which is all superficial,
It isn't, and it isn't, though. It's not like, also.
It's not in the sense that it's
not just alleles that make the difference between me and my brother-in-law, who's Bayesian, but originally from Africa. So he's got different hair texture, different shape features, obviously different melanin levels and skin levels. But so there's some things that are like, again, I'm not entirely sure, but I would guess that if you had like somebody from Central Africa, that they're going to be less likely to have Neanderthal.
Yeah, because Neanderthal was more of
Europeans. Europeans have around 2% Neanderthal.
Wow.
Right, and it's highly likely that that's actually what affected us. Same thing as the Homo heidelbergensis, right? Which I'm not. Again, once it starts getting to like hyper details, like whether or not the Denisovian is Denisovian, or whether or not it's heidelbergensis, or whether or not it's those things are like we're just laymen, right? So fucking all details aside, the difference between me and somebody from the heart of Africa is probably a lot of, well, first of all, there's just alleles for sure, but then there is the Neanderthalis, because people left Africa and fucked Neanderthals, and welcome to Europeans are a result of it. And again, I'm pretty confident the same thing goes in the East with erectus, because sapiens and erectus would have met at some point, and it's not recorded in science and it's not official, but it's probable, highly probabilistic, because if you look at the genotypes in Asia and the genotypes in Africa and the genotypes in Europe, there's more than simply phenomenological things. It is really to the appearances of, 60,000 years ago, or 80,000 years ago, 120,000 years ago, when erectus met sapien, they fucked and created a subclad. Then you could get into the Aflorensis, which is in the Indonesian archipelago. The tiny little people that it might be like a mutation.
They're not the pygmies, but they're similar to pygmies.
Very similar to pygmy stature. Yeah.
Yeah, cuties.
Well, absolutely. But as much as we like to think in terms of very simple linear progressions, there's
like you were born in this part of the world where you were at this elevation and exposed to this light at this angle for this many thousands of years. That's what you look like now.
The out of Africa theory is just an oversimplification where we come out of Africa, we go here, we mutate. We go here, we mutate. We go here, we mutate. That's oversimplified in the sense that people in the Polynesian archipelago, there could have been hominids within Southeast Asia that we are not even aware of. Yeah. We haven't dug up the bones. We haven't figured it out. There could also be very significant phenomenological differences where if you went back 80,000 years and looked at the two people, visibly, they would be completely and utterly distinct. You'd be like, that person and that person, there's no way they could fuck. Well, you'd think that, yeah.
Yeah.
But then as far as their bones and their remains, they're relatively similar, right? Because the differences are developed and are made out of their hair distribution. They could have hair on their face. Yeah. All over their face, or it could be cartilage, or it could be things that simply have not preserved in the fossil record. Could be major differences between the appearances of people. And there's so much more shit in the world than we found. And every appearance that all of the different peoples in the world are actually the result of different subvariants of hominid, that if Africa is the center of everything, period, then that means that these variants left Africa 600,000 years ago, 400,000 years ago, and the sapien, who didn't leave Africa until like 120,000 years ago, then went into these different other areas of the world, Southeast Asia, Northeast Asia, Europe, and they integrated with the variety of hominin that happened to be there for, and anything that's prevalent enough, we find. But things like erectus lasted for 800,000 years or something.
That's almost 1 million. Shit.
Yeah, like this is like how long they were on the earth before they disappeared. Yeah. There's crazy amounts. Homo habilis before them. Homo habilis is like 3 million or something. Right? We're guessing, but if you start to connect the Australopithecus to the 5 million years ago Lucy, with the modern day sapiens, obviously we don't have a lot of links between them. We've got the habilis and then the erectus and then the Neanderthalis and the Heidelbergensis is before Neanderthalis. But again, is it linear? Or are these things that are coming across each other, like it's almost silly to think that it evolved from one thing to the other thing. It's more likely that they diverged. After they left, they were by themselves for 400,000 years, which changed them, made them somehow genetically unique. And then the next wave of humans out of Africa interface with them and get altered by that change, which is in the case of like the Neanderthals.
In that case, let's go back to the beginning, to it only took one cell to birth life, right? So the theory goes. Well, did it have to only just be one, or could have one little whatever thing kind of go boop in the ocean here, and then something completely on the other side of the ocean went boop, and that kind of started stuff? Like there wasn't
it's more likely that there's just an absolute fucking metric shit ton of that going on. Yeah. And one happened to click. Nah. It's much like in the substructures in my model. You've actually got in the one dimension before any real structures occur, you've got these small structures that create. All right, it's almost like if there's a possibility for it to create, it will, but they create, but then they just annihilate. Yeah, create and annihilate, and you'd never even know that they ever existed if you just looked at the world around you. because they never become the world around us. It's only the structures and the superstructures that don't annihilate that exist and persist today, right? So everything else that's temporary or that's fodder to be used in the meanwhile is like literally like grains that are consumed, converted, and pooped out as a completely different material. You know.
Wow.
So there's tons of small structures, and then in the even with the 2D structures, the tons of 2D structures that are garbage, or at least have every appearance to be just garbage, just
like nothing useful came out of their relationship or their existence.
Not the appearance of anything.
Right.
When it gets to one-dimensional stuff, it becomes a little bit more squirrely because two-dimensional stuff is distributed fairly similarly to three-dimensional stuff. Right?
Yeah.
Except for it's distributed on a plane rather than in a torus.
Yeah, exactly.
One-dimensional stuff is distributed. It's ever present.
It's just always there.
Yeah, like a one-dimensional structure it's present all over, everywhere. There's only one, right? So two-dimensional structures, they multiply. There's lots of reason for two-dimensional structures to exist, and they just constantly keep forming and keep forming and keep forming and keep forming, and they densify and they collect and they accumulate until they create gravity. One-dimensional structures, there's only one of them.
Yeah, it's just an infinite line.
Just one, and any two-dimensional structure that relies on a one-dimensional superstructure for its existence, they all rely on the exact same one-dimensional superstructure because there's only one. In the one-dimensional universe, there's only one, and if there's a spatial illusion, or if there's a perception of space somewhere, then
it would be like
it's not a repeating one-dimensional particle. Yeah. It's the same one-dimensional particle. You're just seeing it refracted. If you split the light of a single object, then you see multiple lights. Yeah. But it's the same light. It's the same object. And that's how one-dimensional structures proliferate into the two- and three-dimensional world, whereas two-dimensional structures are actual, like, things that collect and accumulate and stack and until they are a significant force that have gravity.
Man.
Two-dimensional gravity, mind you. So there's no roundness to the gravity. It's flatness. Flatness gravity is something that I hope that people can wrap their mind around one day because it's really fun. And the vast majority of the universe is flatness gravity.
Does it still work the same as round gravity? It's just less. I don't want to say less strong, but it's
no less round.
It's just less round.
Yeah. So rather than a micelle, or that image that you sent me,
yeah,
the whole bunch of sperms all surrounded around a center.
Yeah.
The shape of a micelle or a surfactant. It's like a pom pom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of like the visual design of your utopian world, right? I keep forgetting what it's called.
But the micelle is a three-dimensional object,
right?
Specifically,
it's just three. It's not.
The micelle is three-dimensional gravity, so it's not an example of two-dimensional gravity whatsoever. Yeah. A micelle in two-dimensional gravity in two-dimensional space would become it'd basically be like if you took a bug and squished it on your windshield. So if you drive at a micelle at 1,000 miles an hour until it's a two-dimensional plane, then right. So you could say that a micelle could be constructed from multiple two-dimensional objects that are arranged in a phase system. Whereas if you off-phase a whole bunch of two-dimensional systems that all have the same point.
Pretty sure this is the maths that those flat earthers get into to prove their point. See, gravity can be flat, so therefore I think we're right. It's like, stop doing that.
Well, they are kind of right. Kind of right because flatness is a propensity that exists in the entire universe. We don't walk on a round world.
Yeah.
We walk on a flat world.
Yeah.
We wouldn't be able to have football games, or we wouldn't have hockey games if it was a round world.
Yeah.
We live in a flat reality. We live in a two-dimensional planar type existence where you have a field, and when you look at the field, it's a flat field. You look at the solar system, it's a flat solar system.
Yeah.
You look at the galaxy, it's a flat galaxy, right? So the planarism, or the planar nature, is indisputable, because you aren't rolling around. You're not, like, the Earth might be round, obviously it's spherical, or spheroid, but the presence of flatness in our existence, where you are literally, or the presence of planarism, or so as much as obviously the Earth is not flat, I can't even wrap my mind around why somebody would think it's flat, but I can at least appreciate the fact that as we experience it, everything that we experience, whether or not it's the planet or it's even the solar system, things are planar.
Yeah.
Things are disc-like. They're discish. They tend towards
so much in video games too. Like if I'm playing a space fighting simulator or whatever, I hate that I'm restricted to that plane. I want to, there's some games where you have a little bit of up and down, but you're still up and down in that one plane. There's no actual full 4D or whatever freedom. I'm missing a word there. Degree of freedom. There's not a complete degree of freedom, and it kind of makes me think it's not necessary, perhaps, and it saves on computing power when you're programming the physics engine on these things, but maybe that's an emergent property of our universe, that it doesn't matter if there's space or whatever. You only need to hang out in the planar regions. That's where all the asteroids are that we can mine. That's where all the planets are that we can visit. Like anything else, unless it's like a weird rogue thing, which you shouldn't even be going after anyway, unless it's a giant ball of gold, pure gold, which statistically speaking probably doesn't happen, but could.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, you're just riding gravity wells at that point. And so where does the gravity well start and stop? I'm not sure if we can escape gravity wells in space. I'm not sure if there's space outside of the relationships between things. There's no reason to think that there is. There's no reason to think that there's a vector that's somehow independent of the things in it.
Right. That's
somehow bigger than it. That everything just fits in nicely, and there's no reason to think about it. It really does appear that space itself, the vector of space, is pushed out or forced into existence by the contents within it.
Right.
By the presence of the contents within it.
But just like you said that, we do exist on a flat two-dimensional plane,
everything.
Right?
Yeah,
right?
like the whole universe. Right? So it's not just our solar system.
But the universe that we can observe appears to be flat. So that could mean that there's way the hell more out there, that it is round. But since the part that we can only see, it appears to be flat, I think the same you can extrapolate from that potentially that our universe might actually be round, even though the observable chunk that we can observe seems to be flat.
I don't know how that would work.
Yeah, I don't know
how that would work.
What's his nuts?
I can't make a toroid shape out of the universe in my head. It just doesn't work.
No.
It doesn't appear that the universe is a big giant torus like that, in the sense of the shape of space. The shape of space appears to be sheet-like and ribbon-like.
Yeah.
And it appears to be based off of
simple geometry.
The relationship between bodies of stuff in space, right?
Yeah.
Like our sun. If you look at our solar system floating through space, our solar system isn't floating through empty space at all, right? So our solar system, between the sun and any planet, is actually a force system. It's a system of forces. This relationship is occurring between the sun and every single planet in its orbit is a relationship. And the sun itself isn't in some empty vector. It's actually in a relationship itself. So the sun and all the planets together become one object if you go far enough away, right? Yeah. It's like how a fluorescent tube becomes a point light in this inverse square law.
Yeah.
The solar system itself becomes one object. So if you're the galaxy, you wouldn't differentiate the sun with any of the planets. You'd consider them all one chunk of mass because it's all within a close enough vicinity to each other to be the same thing. Yeah. And that chunk of mass that we call our solar system is actually in a larger gravity well, traveling in its own orbit, in its own orbital, in its own relationship between a larger body, right? Which is, I believe in this case, Sirius. That's in the constellation of Orion.
Is that also known as the North Star?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the solar system itself isn't just traversing through space randomly as space, like some like wild vector that things can travel within. It's actually in an orbit in a vector that's being produced by the existence of this system, right? And even though Sirius might be the center of the system, much like how all of our planets and our sun would be considered one body of mass, the system that we could call Sirius the center of, the system itself is actually an aggregate of forces that are working in tandem to create that large gravity well, the center of which just happens to be Sirius. Much like the center of our solar system just happens to be the sun. But let's be real, all of the planets have a very strong influence on the orbit of them and where the sun is and everything like that, right? Especially Jupiter, because Jupiter doesn't just orbit around the sun also orbits around Jupiter.
Yeah.
Jupiter's big enough that the sun is also working on Jupiter. So, the bodies of planets are as effectual in our own solar orbit. And so there's no space. When I'm looking at this, I'm like, where's the space? I don't see space anywhere. All I see is the gravity well from a larger object that something else is in. Because if you look at Sirius and the system that our solar system's in, well, it's again just another, if you zoom out far enough, it's itself one single object in a larger orbit. Everything is in a larger orbit of everything else. And then the galactic center, we don't know of what it's orbiting, if it's orbiting anything at all. When you get into the galactic levels of things, it looks like just a bunch of random fucking distributed things. But you have to remember that the only thing that we can see of it is also so far back in time that we're looking at a peanut trying to see how the peanut has become a tree. Literally.
Yeah.
Right? So looking back at those, those images that the Hubble takes of the galaxies, and they're all random, and they don't appear to be orbiting each other. They don't even really appear to have any planar
kind of almost looks like they're coming out of like a vortex.
Could be, yeah. They're different directions. They're in, right. So the structure of planarism and the structure of orbital of the wheeling breaks down. Yeah. But that's also 10 billion years ago. Yeah. So our galaxy at that period of time was a peanut, literally just this tiny little peanut. Since then, our galaxy's grown into a tree, and the tree has got forces on it that a peanut doesn't have to worry about. Peanuts don't have xylems and phloems, right? They don't have nutrient transports. Peanuts don't have any of that. Peanuts are just the fucking nut. Peanuts are just a tree potential. They're a tree to be. So they don't have any of the forces on them that exist on a tree. And so when we look at the earliest form of our galaxy that we can see, or the earliest form of another galaxy that we could use an example for ours, what we're looking at isn't actually a tree. We're looking at a seed that will eventually become a tree. And so we can't expect the same forces to apply to the tree later. It's the same problem that we get to when people start applying three-dimensional physics to two-dimensional objects. Like, well, how can we get a spinner to fit in four-dimensional space-time?
Well, you do a little fucking weird thing like that.
Yeah, well, you start modifying stuff.
Yeah.
And true story is, in 1920, they didn't. They dealt with spinners in two-dimensional space. Two-dimensional space-time.
Didn't they just add more degrees to it? Like you have to go 720 degrees or something like that to do a full rotation around it.
Yeah, but it's just how
to
you
bring it back to the starting whatever mode or something.
Exactly. So people are then infatuated, especially with the fucking thing that Eric Weinstein likes to do with his cup about how do you get the cup to go around, you know? And
every time I see that, I don't actually try it. Yeah, there we go. And it just keeps going.
Yeah.
Fuck that.
You got to be really high and do that in front of a mirror.
Man.
Anyway, it's great, but forcing it into three-dimensional space is the problem. And I don't blame them because, again, people would think, how do you get enough degrees of freedom in two-dimensional space to have a 720-degree movement? But it's the same problem as how does a four-dimensional creature imagine a pink beach ball on the nose of a seal?
It has no idea what either of those two things are.
Because a four-dimensional creature like you and me is also a four-dimensional creature like a plant, right? So a plant is a living four-dimensional thing.
So are you saying, sorry to interject on this, but like, are you saying like us being four-dimensional, we are in the same sense as like a tesseract is a four-dimensional object?
What's a tesseract?
It's like a cube within a cube, and usually
a plant. I'm saying we're like a plant.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Any four-dimensional object is just a four-dimensional object. This cup. The difference between this cup and me, as far as dimensionality goes, there's zero. Right. I don't have any more dimensions than this cup has.
Right.
Literally. Right. The cup functions in 3 dimensions in time, and so do I.
Yeah.
But I can somehow talk, and this cup can't.
Yeah.
I'm Adam. This cup doesn't even have a fucking name, right? Yeah. I can imagine a pink ball on a fucking seal's nose, and then I can even imagine my own voice in my head. I can narrate my voice in my head to Morgan Freeman. Really, I can. I can have Morgan Freeman in my head. Right? When I was a musician and I did a lot of drugs, I had like EQ. I had a fucking echo machine in there. I had reverb. Echo's fun. I got to tell you, echo in everything I heard from somebody dropping the pen to the mic everything was echoed, right? Because we have control over our own brain. We're an interesting thing. But we're the same dimensions as this fucking cup. So how do I and this cup exist with the same limit of degrees of freedom? And it's the same way that a two-dimensional bullshit item and a two-dimensional non-bullshit item exist in the same thing. And it's because one is a structure, one's just a simple structure, and one's an aggregate of structures that are all working in similitude, in tandem, unity with each other to create the illusion of a macroscopic, multidimensional with emergent qualities, right? Because we are not the sum of our parts. When we're dead, we are the sum of our parts. The moment that the life leaves your body, you are the sum of your parts. But while you're alive, and I can ask you what your name is, you are more than the sum of your parts, because you being able to answer your name is an emergent something. It's more than just of the material that you're made of, right? So how do we get these multiple dimensions, these degrees of freedom where you can be a person and a human and all this stuff? You can have traits, you can have likes and dislikes, but that's the same shit as a cup. No different. The materials aren't different, but the arrangement of materials and the relationship in how the arranged materials work. And in the case of us, it produces electromagnetism. It produces heat. We are a combination of like 8 cups together, basically. We're a cup and a fucking mic and a pill bottle all together that somehow create electromagnetism, somehow create heat, body heat, somehow talk and make itself a name, call itself a name. You know, I can even break this cup if I want, or I can melt it down and make a new cup.
You can rearrange the atoms and see what happens.
Sure. So what is the difference then? Because it's not the materials that we're made of, and it's not the dimensions that we are limited to, because no matter what, if the difference between you being multidimensional and you being strictly 4-dimensional is whether or not you respond to a question or whether or not you're dead, then that means that those dimensions are emergent. Emergent meaning they are not actually systemic. They're not part of the aggregate whole. They're not one of the elements that's used to produce the object. They're an element that is produced as a result of combining other elements that would not be there otherwise. Much like if you have a dynamo and you have a copper coil and a magnet, and you run the coil through the magnet, a current occurs, and that current is neither the magnet nor the copper, or the magnet. It is the relationship between the two that's now created a new emergent force, but is just as real as what it came from. Because now if you have something beside it, the magnetic field produced from that current can now affect something that's not even touching it, right? So you obviously can't say that emergent field, it doesn't exist, because it has visible existence. You can see it. If you have metal filings around, you can see the metal filings conform to the field.
Yeah.
But it's an emergent field that's neither either of the ingredients nor the sum of those ingredients. It's the relationship between those ingredients. It is more fundamental and it is more important than can be easily described. And to be honest with you, I didn't think that we get this. I didn't think that we get this far in progression, because I think that this is actually, if somebody's listening to it, I think that they're really starting to be able to understand what the importance of a relationship is outside of human terms, to the degree where it is literally these forces by which we live by, that we understand, being gravity, being electromagnetism, being, that are simply the result of relationships. And that's why I also then roll back to gravity and say that in my model, gravity is the result of the relationships of things. Gravity is not a thing that exists in and of itself. It is a property that's emergent. And so it's not actually a particle. It's something that can be observed. Right? So if you're another organism or if you're like an alien, you might not even really recognize gravity. You'd just be like, oh, like that tendency for things to group. You might have a different name for it, because you'd be like, well, bosons do it too, but it has nothing to do with their mass.
Yeah.
It's a tendency of grouping.
Yeah. Like I think we talked about it before, like I brought up to you the single electron theory. I can't remember who started it, but I haven't really looked into it. It's just one of the many topics that's come across my viewing of YouTubes and whatever, and it's just like kind of in my head. So I don't know exactly what it is, but if I were to think about it, not knowing shit and just going off of my, creative imagination, I'd be like, well, why isn't everything one electron that just splits itself as many times as it has to create relationships? Which is why I suggested, instead of 1 plus 2 plus 1 dimensions, 1 divided by 0.5 plus 1 dimensions. Because I can accept 1 dimension. There's just one. But how do you get a second dimension? Well, maybe that first dimension halves itself and then creates the 2-dimensional relationship, and then blah, 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 going on from there.
It's not, and it's really not a bad idea, right? It's really not a bad idea, because especially when you're dealing with a finite resource, that's the problem. Is that other people would be like, well, why can't you just add the 2 dimensions together? Because this is a finite resource. If you could add the 2 dimensions together, then there wouldn't be 1 dimension. How do you get to 2 from 1?
Infinity.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
But if you have 1, then you don't just add another one, because there's 1. Yeah. That's a very important thing, right? So the 1 dividing itself into 2 is really, really reasonable. Although that's not necessarily, like, I'm not sold on it personally. It's in there. I'm just not sure how that actually works, right? Because some function mitosis, it's just like what functions and what is available for it to do that. No idea. But you know what? No idea one way or the other. So any way to try to wrap the mind around it is a good way. And when you first said it, I was like, huh? And then I thought about it. I was like, fuck, that's actually a really good way of looking at it. But that's something that I'm going to have to wrap my mind around, because how does something divide itself without, like, where does divide itself come in? Where's where the principle of divide itself?
I think it's, if I knew my math better, I would be able to explain it better than just throwing out that it's just fractions. It's infinitesimal. So if there's an infinite amount of numbers of 1s in between 1 and 2, or however that's explained, can't really remember how to explain that better, but it's how we get fractals inside the computer program, right? You put in some point, whatever random infinitesimal you want, a number that goes on forever, and then the computer program goes, oh, you mean this? And then you just zoom in and zoom in and zoom in. It's the same thing forever and ever and ever. So I don't know. I wish I could say that, like, I had some profound knowledge given to me through a mushroom trip, but all I've ever been able to get from mushroom trips is some really crazy world building abilities that I don't naturally have. Like, I have a pretty good picture memory, but I see everything in 2D. So, like, when you're talking about the seal bouncing a pink ball on its nose, I first see it as a cartoon. I build it as a cartoon, and then I can convert that cartoon into a semi 3D, a real picture of an actual seal with an actual ball that has, like, our resolution. But first I'll think of things in, like, less resolution, and then I'll build it.
Interesting.
Or at least,
interesting.
Yeah. Cause, like, but on mushrooms, I'm in, like, a 3-dimensional world already, and it's doing all kinds of crazy stuff when my eyes are closed. Sometimes when they're open, I'll see some fractals here and there, but most of the time it's just when I close my eyes. And I wish I could say that, like, I have more information from that, but other than, like, maybe there's something about those fractals. Like, of course, the visuals that you're seeing when you're on mushrooms is because, I hope I don't get this wrong, your hippocampus, which I think is part of controlling when you're aware of something. Like, so instead of always having all of your senses blasting you and being like, I think,
latent inhibition is lowered.
Yeah. So when you're fucked up on mushrooms or any other kind of psychedelic, all of those channels that are usually suppressed are way open.
Exactly.
So now your visual cortex or whatever is now being like, I don't know what you're looking at, but here's this. Is it close?
Yeah, and sometimes for sure. Yeah, and then also the vibration of the eyes, the vibration of the low amplitude, high frequency vibration that tends to cause double exposures or aberration, chromatic aberrations. So essentially, you'll look at something and you'll see, like, in the newspaper, the red and green bleed that you could sometimes see in a newspaper. Well, chromatic aberrations like that exist in our eye, because as it vibrates, it's picking up the wavelengths of light, and it's actually splitting the wavelengths of light as it's inputting. It's breaking them up as it's inputting, so you
like right at the eyeball level.
At the eyeball level, its vibration is literally, your eyes are just micro vibrating really fast, and it's splitting the wave of light so that you can see the red and the green channel separately. Which is really strange, but it's just, you're just high. The things that happen that aren't explainable, those are like, I've had some great trips, and I'm talking like full environment shift. So it's easy to explain away some things. I'd say that most phenomena are just a result of physiological effects of either brain chemistry or of, like eye phenomena or something like that. But it's the things that, there's a lot of things that aren't, which again start to dip into the multidimensionality of the human being, where things you can change, you can really jump worlds, so to speak, where everything's changed 100%.
I think there might be something to, how like it's not a very commonly used trope, but it's nonetheless used in some thriller type of story writing. Like, you look at the reflection in the mirror, it looks back at you, and then kind of moves. Oh, yeah. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. There's a chance that there actually might be a literal copy of ourselves, whether or not it's a copy, or it's like there's two of you, or that it's just the reflection of you. And where I'm coming from is, so a black hole, something falls into a black hole. It passes the event horizon, and whatever happens inside the black hole happens to it, right? That information, that data, right? That mass falls in there. But to everyone outside, whatever fell into the black hole will forever be visually present at the event horizon. Like, even after the thing has fallen in, that thing, the image of it will still be there. So in that same regard, there might be the same thing on the outside of the universe, right? There might be reflections of us, and not just us as living beings, but like all of the other fucking stars and galaxies and shit. But nonetheless, there could be these copies, and they might just be visual, but like, I'm gonna have to pull up the thing, not now obviously, but later. I'll send you the thing that I got that from.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's is there a way to determine whether or not we are in fact in a black hole ourselves, or people in the event horizon ourselves?
Yeah.
Right? Because I don't think the person in the event horizon would be necessarily destroyed, right? The idea that you'd be spaghettified and like pulled into a string of spaghetti, I don't think that's reasonable at all. You'd be, if you were caught by a black hole, you'd still be like, whatever science and math is like your visible infinity. I don't even understand that. I don't get that, but you would be caught in it and you'd be trapped by it. You'd be unable to escape through any practical means way before light is inescapable.
Would you be able to even recognize the passage of time? Like, so you're at a black hole, time slows down because of how much the gravity and everything is being warped by how much mass there is. So would your time, yourself that you were experiencing, come to a like a real like, and but like your brain would be going, that same would be affected too. So you would just be there and like it would be like an infinite moment.
You wouldn't even notice.
You wouldn't know.
We could be in that moment. We wouldn't know. Right?
Holy fuck. I hate because like I every time I start going down my own little thought experiments, I'm like, all right, get out of there.
But the perception of it being relative to it is something that may or may not be true, right? Because perception of time and time is not the same. We perceive time in a whole bunch of different relative ways, but even if we just consider the most average perception of time, different animals have different perceptions of time. So a moment that spans for us and a moment that spans for a fly or a hummingbird, right? Like a hummingbird has like 4 or 5 moments in one of ours, right?
Wow.
Oh yeah, like you try to grab a fly and the fly sees we're like,
it has enough time to give you the finger and fuck off.
Yeah, exactly. Because one moment in a fly's world is broken up into several. One of ours would be broken up into several for its mind, right? And so again, does your perception change when you have when you live in a physical condition? Well, as far as the difference between a fly and us, that's a scale system. But if you were to take that fly and put it in a different gravity, which is going to affect time and it's going to affect the speed of light, would that fly slow down as well? Or would it be like, wow, this is really weird. Now I'm suddenly like, would it, because it's been conditioned to it, the time that it exists in, I should say, I guess at that point, is the consciousness and awareness of time persistent to the physical time that you exist within, or is it independent of it? And it really does appear to be independent of it, because sometimes time can pass quickly and sometimes it passes slowly. If you've never had time pass slowly, then DMT is something to try.
Oh, I've definitely had.
Because DMT, you're looking at 15 minutes, could be, you could age into your 70s on a farm. Like, do you remember that old Star Trek episode?
Yeah.
Where Picard like goes into the holodeck and he like has a family and wife and kids and a whole bunch of different shit. And then he pops out and it's just been moments later.
Yeah.
DMT.
Man.
Really, right there, right? So yeah, you see the mandalas, but after you see the mandalas, you end up having like a 4 to 6 hour journey easy through the different doorways that you find that you get launched through. Talk to the golden gods, meet the light warrior angel people, whatever it is you do. And then when you come back to your body, you've had like this massive epic adventure. Like Bill and Ted have seen nothing in comparison to what you just came back from. And it was 7.5 minutes.
Wow. Real time.
And you literally have aged.
Yeah.
You're an older person now.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh my God, I'm a human, right? Being high on that, going out, getting booted out of your body, it's weird. It's uncomfortable. It's like, you're like this little human experiencing something for the first time. Coming back to your body is a completely different person than who left.
Yeah.
And it's actually really kind of shocking when you get back to remember that you're a human. A human named whatever your name is.
Yeah.
You're immortal. Colors are actually dull. Tastes and smells are dull. This world of imprints and illusions is dull. It's very dull because you just came from a place that was very bright, very colorful, rich with experience, rich with smells and flavors, and rich with color. And then you come back to this world and it's all just a bunch of dead rocks floating through space and a bunch of people waiting to die. You know, it's really fucked up. But I mean, how do you not get affected by that? So people quite often will believe then, take it with them, that whatever they just experienced is more real because it's more colorful. It's more enjoyable. Vivid, way more enjoyable. Oh, hell yeah. Like if that was reality, we'd be super happy about it. Yeah. But there's this persistent sense of it really is. It really is. You know, when you're coming back from a DMT trip, you're like not just coming down and you're not just coming back. You're not waking up. You're going back to sleep. Yeah. You're going back to sleep.
Absolutely.
You're going back to being just an animal. It's got to eat 3 times a day. You know, it wants sex. It wants alcohol, it wants stimulation, physical stimulation, biochemical stimulation.
Wants to express itself. If
it's lucky. If we're lucky. Yeah, because a lot of people won't even go that far, right?
It wants to rage. It wants to cry. It wants to laugh. It wants to pray. It wants to...
If you're lucky. Yeah. If you're lucky. If it doesn't just want to watch TV and fucking eat Cheetos and then go to work the next day.
Right? Please, people, stop watching so much Family Guy.
No, it's just a really boring life that we live. And, you know, you have these profound experiences when you're young, and you have these profound experiences with music and dance. If you've never combined drugs, music, and dance, then you're definitely missing out. But we have these, we can have these wonderful experiences that when we're young, that just end up petering out into the bullshit monotony of life when we're older. Yeah. And no matter how you slice it, something like DMT is going to be probably the best experience that you've ever had, but it's also going to be like fucking a Swedish bikini model. Woo! I'm going to be straight up honest with you. You are fucking a Swedish bikini model, and you're ruined from that point on. Like, really, you know, somebody else might be hot, but they'll never be Swedish bikini model hot. So you're peaking in your life at that point without even really realizing it. That's the high of somebody's life. They're the most intelligent that they'll ever be. They're the most profound they'll ever be. They're the most connected to the universe and volatile. They're living the most they'll ever be. And from that point on, they'll just start to peter out and become boring and monotonous and autonomic. And, you know,
let's have kids. Let's continue this shit. See what they do with it.
Is Heroes going to put out another season? You know, what did you think about that last fucking Game of Thrones episode? I'm a fucking boring person. No. But I mean, let's not be too hard on people, because fact is, it's most people. And one of the things about being weird is you have to appreciate people who aren't, because they're what makes you special. It's the normal people who make me special. It's not me. If everybody was like me, I'd just be another fucking dick. But everybody else just wants to be boring. And, you know, I want to be boring too a lot of days, because boring's really, really good. And play some farming simulator and eat some spicy Doritos and just, you know, smoke
Mountain Dew it up.
Smoke some cannabis reefer and enjoy fucking life, right? But I don't know, man. This conversation on relationships is an A+ for me. And I hope that anybody who wants to follow the ideas that this podcast is really trying to purport, I hope they find this episode, because I think that this has got some very basic structural bits that are needed in order to understand the larger picture, right? It's one of the problems with, intuition is all about, a cloud understanding, a cloud appreciation, or a perspective of a complicated system that we can't understand truthfully, but we can get the Bob Ross painting version of it. We get the gist of it because we understand enough things, right? And especially like a polymath like yourself or like myself, where we're not necessarily going to be specialists on something, but we understand a little bit of everything enough to really create a picture. And it's required for intuition. You need to know about cells. You need to know about physics. You need to know about biology. You need to know about everything, math, right? The even a generalist, intuitive understanding of how the world works requires specific knowledge in order for us to build what we call an intuition, at least an accurate one. Right? The difference between two people's understanding of something, if neither of them are really professional, is going to be based off of the general body of knowledge that they're equipped with, right? So somebody who's really equipped with the sciences and really equipped with the maths will tend to have a more accurate intuitive understanding of a complex system compared to somebody who doesn't have any idea of anything. They're going to have like an interesting human relationship or human associative way of looking at things. But, knowledge is key.
I would really wish, because like nothing I know or talk about, I just came out of nowhere. It came because I paid attention in school, and and then after school I said, fuck school, fuck college, fuck university. I'm not the kind of person to do that. But I never said fuck education, fuck continual learning. That's all I do when I'm not, trying to play music or whatever, is I'm literally trying to devour as much of this physics I can comprehend, as much as the biology, everything you said, even the philosophy, right? Like as soon as I started realizing like the practicality of philosophy, I'm just like, oh, this isn't so wooey after all. Like, yeah,
absolutely.
Grow your mind, because I was kind of making a joke, and no offense to Seth MacFarlane, he writes some funny shit, but if you invite me over to smoke weed and just watch Family Guy for 5 hours, fuck you. I want to talk to you about something. Don't fucking I don't want to come over and turn my brain off with you. I'm here to turn your brain on, and I hope more people find turning their brain on cool, because
yeah, if you want to watch Family Guy, it's cool, but set me up a chair with my back to the TV, and I'll watch you watch Family Guy, because I'm actually more interested in watching somebody watch a television show and then talk to them while they're watching it. I can't even imagine like people who get together and watch movies together. Above my head. I don't get it. Yeah. Never understand that. Like, I don't want to do anything with you that I do when I'm alone, because I'm that bored. Yeah. I'm so fucking bored sometimes that I'm willing to watch a 1.5 hour movie about fictional people in a fictional world. None of this is even true or relevant to anything. It's just somebody jerking off with their typewriter and somebody else turned it into a movie. Yeah. Absolutely 0 point to any of it. And I have to be really, 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 really bored before I do that. Yeah. Or like, I'm just like, I'm depressed, or I'm like trying to get off caffeine or something. So I'm just going to like lie around and jerk off and watch fucking Lucifer episodes, or,
Not a bad show. I've seen a couple episodes.
Not that I've done that. No, I mean, like I binge watched it in bed. I literally binge watched it in bed. Yeah. While I was like trying to cool off nicotine.
Woo. And how's that been going, by the way?
It's never fun.
Yeah.
No, I think mood altering shit is mood altering for a really long time.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to fight myself. Like every once in a while, I'll have a cigarette when I run out of juice for my vaporizers or whatever.
Yeah.
But like I'm at such like at a not a crossroads, maybe a crossroads where it's just like, you know what, fuck it, I want to smoke. But then as soon as I have that cigarette, I'm just like, I don't want this smoke. Fuck.
Yeah. No, if I was at the place where I could be like, yeah, maybe I will, maybe I won't. I probably still wouldn't even tempt it, but no, not at that spot. Not at that spot. I'd like to be able to smoke cigars one day.
And then not it like kind of snowball back into a cigarette.
Like I'm going to enjoy the cigar for like 3 hours.
Yeah.
And I'm smoking.
Let it go out. Let it back up. Let it go out. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's like, not a big deal. It's the the problem is that we are really easily and quickly corrupted. Our programming is corrupted. Nicotine's fine. I don't think nicotine's a demon for everybody that it is for me. But for me, it's a demon. It changes my thinking, it changes my goals, my aspirations, my behavior. It hijacks my body and does what it wants. And it's not a good relationship to have with a chemical. If I had that relationship with alcohol, I'd have to avoid alcohol. If I had it with cannabis, even, I'd have to avoid cannabis. Like if I was like, I will do anything, then I'd be like, fuck, this is a bit of a problem, This is a bit of a problem. But nicotine is a horrible one for me. But it isn't for everybody. And I think cultures that haven't abused it in the past, like the indigenous peoples of North America, use tobacco like we use alcohol in Europe. People used alcohol in Europe also to clean the water. Yeah. To be honest. Yeah. But using it as a social lubrication and as a stress reliever, as a muscle relaxer, as a, you've got something that you really want to do, boom, you can have a fucking flask hit, just to take the nerves off. All the things that we use alcohol for, tobacco was used for in the indigenous culture. A different form of tobacco than we have, obviously. Yeah. Really strong too, and psychotropic. Psychedelic, bit of a psychedelic to it too.
Are you referring to the snuff stuff that the Central and South American natives were doing, where they would like make grind up a powder, make it into a powder, put it into a nose pipe, stick it in your nose, and you get your bite and go.
Was that tobacco, or was that not other things as well?
I think it's tobacco and some other things.
Like I thought there's like daturas in there and stuff too.
Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff. I think you mostly get a head rush from it, but if you got the right shaman and the right mix, you could probably have a real good time for a few hours.
I just remember belladonna or another datura being involved in that, much like the eye drops that people used to use.
I'm not aware of eye drops other than like
back in the 1800s, women would use belladonna eye drops, and it would make their pupils big.
For a look, but would it also get them kind of fucked? Like
I don't think the belladonna drop was enough to get them high, but the datura plant was used in South America, I think exclusively, right? Datura is a South American. Yeah, datura would be, because it's part of the nightshade family.
Okay.
Right? Well, the Solanaceae, and those are all strictly South and Central American plants, like the potato and the fucking eggplant and tomato. Yeah. Belladonna is a purple flower with little red berries that they grow all over. Yeah, and anyway, the datura itself was used by people in the Middle Ages and stuff as well. It was used for menstruation cramps relatively recently. But yeah, I think it was in the snuff.
Yeah.
Pretty sure it was in the snuff.
Yeah. Woo!
Well, yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, I've never tried snuff. I can only imagine it sucks.
And they'd make it with their wine as well. They'd add daturas to their wine.
Yeah.
So, yep. No, wine used to have lots of cool stuff in it. Fucking people were brave back then. You know?
What did this do? What did this do?
Yeah, and I mean, South Americans, they obviously experimented quite a bit because ayahuasca is a very complicated mix of drugs.
How do you figure that out? Like, you need two different plants, right? And do they even grow anywhere near each other?
They don't actually. They don't. And you don't just need two different plants. You need several different plants, but one will kill you unless you add another one. Because it's the alkaloid will just kill you, so you have to neutralize the alkaloid with the other plant. And
you also have to have the thing that,
and then it converts the alkaloid into a.
And then you have to have the part that stops your own biological systems from inhibiting the reaction. It was so dumb.
And then it's got an enzyme inhibitor so that you don't break it down too fast, so that it can give you it's extremely complicated.
And then you have to deal with the purging, whether it's you have an emotional breakdown, start crying, you start throwing up, you start shitting, or all of the above. Yeah.
Well, vomiting and whatever occurs with the vomiting. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Yeah. The purging's pretty bad. And the funny thing is, too, is that at the end, when they finally got the recipe right, they were shitting and vomiting. Like, if you get it right,
this is done.
Exactly, right? Like, if you do it right, then you end up on the ground shitting yourself and puking simultaneously for about 4 hours until it wears off, and then you get to have fun.
And then it gets good. Yeah.
And then people were like, perfect. Like they didn't try to refine it more so that you could avoid you know what? They didn't. And same thing with peyote. Yeah. Peyote, you when you eat peyote, you just vomit and vomit and vomit. Yeah. And you start by vomiting. And if you've ever OD'd on mushrooms, you also start by vomiting, right? It is an incredibly good entry into any psychedelic experience. If you find yourself vulnerable, laying in the fucking fetal position, vomiting uncontrollably, you're going to have a really, really, really good trip. Because you are erasing yourself. You're not going to want to be there. You're not going to want to experience it, right? Like 10 minutes of vomiting uncontrollably and dry heaving while you're high, and you just start to fade. You take a vacation because you don't want to be there. You don't want to do it. You don't want to experience it. It's horrible. Suddenly you're in hell, and the best way to just escape hell is to just stop being there, stop observing it. And then next thing you know, somebody else emerges. A fucking phoenix emerges from the fire once you've given up. You've fucking completely tapped out. Yeah. Then that phoenix emerges, and that phoenix is clear and clean. It's a white, fresh piece of paper. It's an unstained, absolutely fresh piece of lamb skin, white lamb skin that you arise from the fire. And you then look at the world as a baby, fresh and vulnerable, with like literally, really. And it's just the best experience because you've vomited out every last bit of personality that you have until you're left with human. You are now just human. As raw as it gets, as plain as it gets, all of your personality traits, all of your character traits, all of your ideas of who you are, all your memories of being a human and your friends and family are gone. You fucking pooed and puked every last bit of you you're gone until you're gone. And then you emerge just a baby going, look at the world. And you have the best trip ever. So, I mean, I wouldn't pull the purge out of the mushrooms that I've done. Because I've done like mushrooms to the point where where I'm like literally uncontrollably vomiting for 2 hours. And those are the best trips. I don't recommend it. Find the camera. I'm like, where's the camera? I do not recommend it for the record. Because I think somebody could possibly hurt themselves if they didn't do it right.
Throwing up fucked up is a good call for getting aspirated, which is what killed a lot of our famous rock star friends, namely the best drummer in the world, John Bonham.
Yeah.
He did it drinking though, but puking and inhaling your puke will give you some infections that's probably not going to be survivable.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And even if you don't just inhale your puke, you can have a lot of issues if you get that high. Like, I'm not sure the permanent psychological stuff with something like mushrooms. I've never seen anybody have permanent effects from overdosing of mushrooms, but I have seen it on LSD, so it's possible, I'd say.
But LSD is kind of it's a funny one. You're either getting the rat poison or you're getting some good shit that someone knows how to make, and either one of them can set you if you're already predisposed for mental illness and it just hasn't fully reared its head yet, or whatever age you are.
Yep.
You know, I don't know how good the science is on that these days, if that's actual concrete or if it's just still something that I don't know. Yeah, kind of probably happens. I don't know.
I think it's a lot more settled. Same thing as cannabis use, and that's where the term latent inhibition comes in, and lowering your latent inhibition, because your latent inhibition keeps you sane. It just essentially, there's a billion stimuli that our brain could be consumed with that happen every moment. And our brain has had to learn how to filter stimuli over, the millions of years that is relevant to us, right? And so that's one of the things that when you get high, you experience stimulations, whether it's endogenous or exogenous, that you have evolved to ignore because they're not useful. They're not a predator. They're not a mate. They're not food. Right? So they're not useful. But as far as a full philosophical animal is concerned, they might be incredibly useful. They might be deeply philosophical. They might be deeply meaningful as far as a personal thing goes. But as far as is it going to get you your next meal? Is it going to get you laid? No. So 99% of our life, we're just simply never going to humor it. And it would be a waste of energy for us to, and it would also be a waste of time, because if you're philosophizing on life when the fucking food walks by and you're not noticing that it's food, you're going to go hungry. If you're not noticing that it's a predator, you're going to get eaten. So things that keep us cerebral and aloof and shit like that, they've never been useful in history. It's only now that they're even moderately useful, but they're essentially been bred out of us. You take drugs, and the latent inhibition's lowered. The protection that we have, or not even really protection, but the function of ignoring everything that's useless, is turned down, and now useless stimuli is able to be observed, whether it's stuff that occurs within you, mental processes that happen in the background of your brain that you've never really noticed happening before. Whatever it is, right? I mean, it's essentially stuff that's there that you've simply never noticed before, which is one of the problems with the whole idea of, well, were you high when you experienced that? I think that people, for their own sanity, want to diminish people's experiences that were high, simply because they're high, and it's just easier to go, oh, well, you were just high, Yeah. And if you're protective of your worldview, then you're going to be really quick to dismiss anything that challenges it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, because of the lowering of the latent inhibition and the ability for the observer to be aware of stimuli that it would otherwise ignore, if you do happen to be more aware of a stimuli, then there's certainly a chance that it's real. It's not a result of being high, that stimuli is being produced by you as a result of being high. It's that stimuli is produced all the time, and it would normally be ignored, but now that you're high, you're stumbling upon it.
Yeah.
And this is a sensual thing too. Yeah. Like how much
euphoria and whatever going through your veins. You're getting reward. Your natural reward system is going off like crazy. It's going like, yeah, you like this, we like this, woo.
Well, also people will process other people better or differently, but usually better. So rather than just hanging out with a person and not really thinking of much, now you're noticing all of their responses to you. You're noticing all these very subtle body languages and eye movements and things that your brain would normally just ignore about other people are also now more visible, and you become more self-conscious, more self-aware of yourself, more self-conscious, I should say, because it produces self-consciousness rather than self-awareness.
But when you're,
it's interesting.
It is interesting because, like, I think that's probably where that relationship we have with one another, whether it's you or me or whatever other strangers, the sense of reading each other's minds, telekinesis, right? I'm not gonna say I don't believe that there's something unexplainable maybe going on with that, but how I do consolidate and make it understandable is we do communicate telekinetically. We send a message from our heads to our mouths make sound travels through airwaves, hits the other person's ear, you're now inside their head. Yeah, it's not like the comic books or whatever exactly, but I believe there is a way, as long as you have a relationship with someone and they know you for a certain amount of time, they're going to know you from your behaviors, from your constants, from your consistency, that, yeah, maybe you did communicate with each other telepathically, telekinetically, whatever. But maybe you just said enough with having a relationship such as you do that you don't have to, you need less of this and just a little this, just a little whatever.
It's knowing what somebody's going to say before they say it, because you know them. Yeah. And the other thing is that your eyes might look a certain way before you say something, or your facial, whether or not you can tell if somebody's thinking about something that's happy or sad, or that's funny, and if you know that person well enough, then you can read the context, be able to go, oh, well, they're finding what I'm saying humorous. Oh, they're taking a piss at me in their head. Oh, they're actually agreeing with me, and they're associating with what I'm saying with something that's personally happened to them, because you can tell based on how somebody's leading to what they're going to say next, or their facial expressions, or their So again, there is a lot of very non-physical communication that we have that could be associated with something psychical, but
less than 30 minutes.
Okay. Yeah. Should we wrap her up? We got less than 30 minutes left on this mofo, but I mean, we could keep going. I
did have a curiosity about the onion metaphor, I think is the correct term that you've been bringing up. Are those layers infinite, or is there a finite amount of layers to this onion?
It appears to be finite. I'd say it's finite.
Okay.
I'd say not only is it finite, but it's mappable. So that's one of the things that people have been doing for centuries, is the onion. I use the metaphor, but what we're really talking about is we're talking about a phenomena that we're all built with. It's part of our structure. Right. And we are literally composed of layers. And when you occupy a layer, you remember who you are in that layer, all about the information in that layer, and only that one. And if you traverse layers, then you will literally become a different portion of yourself, a different part of yourself, a different slice of your personality, who has a different perspective and different memories. Right? So it is really quite distinct. Usually those layers are accessed through meditation. So you get to a certain level of meditation where you get kind of within yourself to a degree. You can kind of catch up where you left off last time. right? Because you on this more surface part of yourself is a part of a different onion skin. It's different. It's got different goals, different aspirations. It gets hungry, it gets thirsty, stuff like that. Deeper parts of us don't experience those physical shit, right? That's what really one of the reasons why meditation works is you ignore the physical part of your mental existence, emotional existence, and the subtler parts that are quieter. They're a quieter voice within us. They're less useful as far as survival. Those parts can come out and they have a voice and they've got actually really interesting ideas. And theoretically, if you can listen to those voices and get deeper and deeper and deeper, then you end up finding you end up finding a voice that's questionably yours. Right?
Wow.
Is really it. And but I don't think most people will ever really traverse that much of it, but if they traverse any of themselves, then I think I'm very confident that the analogy of an onion and how you can peel off the layers of the skin to get to the core is a sufficient analogy. Because there's really no way to explain it. There are some mystical systems that do attempt to explain what I'm using as an onion metaphor, but they're so complicated that if you were to look at them, you wouldn't see an onion skin.
Nah.
Right? It's just so much simpler looking at it like that, where you peel one layer off and you're left with another one. Especially for people who do experiment with psychedelics, they're going to find themselves in places within themselves where they are literally different people with different cognition and basically different memories. They might even feel older. They might feel wiser. They might feel younger. But it is different parts of themselves. And once they leave that part of themselves, they will be essentially detached from it. Right. And that's kind of almost like a wishy-washy way of describing it, because really, when it comes right down to it, it's far more anchored in reality. If somebody meditates, it's going to take an extremely long time for them to get past their
ego.
Basically, yeah. Basically, yeah. You don't know where you're going. Yeah. Really, is that you know where you are, you know where you've been, but you don't know where you're going. As far as I'm aware, much like in the luck versus effort episode, you have to stumble on it, or if you hang out in yourself meditatively long enough, you will suddenly get some fucking stimuli or something like that that'll lead you towards the right road, or I don't know. It's one of those things. It's difficult to cross from, why am I doing this? I'm sitting here. Why, you're a human being sitting because you've heard that that's supposed to do something, and you heard about some people in India who have this fucking thing they call yoga, and it all seems so absolutely stupid, and you're just a voice talking to yourself, and what's supposed to be gained from this, and is there, like, you look at yourself like a finite person that you've seen all of, so what could you possibly know more of yourself? And really, the truth be told is that you're like a fucking beautiful structure. You're a temple, and you've only ever seen the paint coating on the door. That's all you've ever seen, is the paint on the coating of the door. That's it. So if you think you know of yourself, and you think that you can sit with yourself, and you think that, you sitting here by yourself wondering what you're supposed to be doing is it, it's not it. You have to keep going. You have to, if you want to find it, because there's so much in there that is only revealed to the adventurous, is only, yeah. It's like splunking. It's caving or something. It's splunking in a cave. You have to be really brave. You have to be fit. You have to be confident. And if you're not, then it's probably best you don't even bother, because you're not going to get anywhere, and you're not going to be satisfied with it. But if you're brave and you're strong and you're curious, then there's a fucking cave system with stalactites and stalagmites and giant fucking glowing crystals, and it's really, really cool. And there's fairies and elves. So I'd check it out. I'd check it out if it's worth your time. If it's not, then fuck it. But again, don't expect to be the same person when you come out as when you're in there, because you're going to occupy a different onion skin within yourself that's still part of you, but it's not part of you. It's not the person who calls himself Danny, and it's not the person who calls himself Adam, because those are actually really dumb human people that are stuck in watery fat bags that can experience themselves as something better. But let's be real. We're human.
Yeah.
We are human.
Yeah. Well, I think I really liked this conversation a lot better than the first one. I felt like it flowed more in the ideas. Like, actually, a lot of the stuff we talked about today were things that I wanted to talk about, but I couldn't find myself the right way to get there. To get the questions going and get the information flowing. But
no, it's sometimes it's awkward too. I don't know how Rogan brings completely new people in day after day after day after day and finds like a groove. It's the groove, right? Once a groove's established, then you're good. But to be able to find a groove sometimes takes an episode. And well, consciousness is a tough subject too, and I've got a list of shit that I want to deal with consciousness. But it's basically the biggest subject that we can talk about. It's the Ouroboros. It's the two hands drawing itself, right? So it's not a 3-hour conversation. Consciousness is a lifetime to understand, and even then you probably don't, but something to be built on over time, not just not uncovered in a single session.
Yeah. If that's I think that's all we got in us today for sure.
Fuck yeah.
I'm starting to lose it, but if can anyone listen to this right now, or is this just
No.
Okay.
No.
Well, if anyone does happen upon this, question everything, but not only question everything, just ask questions in general. Be curious, be adventurous. You don't have to be brave. You don't have to, smoke weed or do drugs or anything. You don't need to meditate. But please, if anything you get from any of these is ask questions
and find answers to that stuff too, because I tell you, the people who just question everything and only question everything, it's fucking annoying as fuck. I don't want to be like 80 years old and asking the same fucking questions as I asked when I was 18.
Yeah.
Right? You got to find some answers for stuff. Put in some fucking time, read some books, watch some videos, do some things, learn some stuff, right? Get some chemistry, get some biology, get some anatomy, get some physics, watch some Brian Greene and fucking Neil deGrasse Tyson and people like that. Feed your brain, because it is not enough to question everything. You have to find some answers, and you're not going to find answers to everything. It's not about finding answers to everything. But if you don't fill in the simple questions, you'll never get to the good ones. That's really it, is you got to eliminate the simple questions before complicated questions can even be asked. It's a matter of refining the question, because the answer is here. The answer exists already. It's a matter of refining our question and figuring out what's the question to ask, to have the best appreciation or the best understanding, or, essentially you're looking at the same thing with two different perspectives is it, right?
And if it's not
What's that?
No, yeah, I thought you're done.
If it's, in one way you appreciate it, the other way you simply don't.
Yeah. And if it's not for you, if fuck all of that, let's just pound out 8 hours of Family Guy before I got to go to work tomorrow. Mm-hmm. At least don't be an asshole to people.
I usually just pound out 8 inches of. Wait, what?
Oh fuck yeah! But yeah, no, because
before it gets fully erect.
Woo!
Starts at 8.
I really feel like the more people question and the more they know, the less asshole I think the world will be.
I don't know, man. Is that true? Like,
I hope so.
Am I less of an asshole than somebody who doesn't question things? Because I feel like I'm multiple times the asshole that they are.
What?
I think questioning everything has made me a greater asshole, especially considering I find people's simple answers fucking intolerable. I find them intolerable. Like, if you've got like a simple excuse style answer for shit, I find it intolerable. No, it might make some people a better person, but it might also make you a literalist or sharper, more executed, less able to be
manipulated,
maybe. or what was I going to say? Less easy to humor shit, right? I think before I knew what I knew, I was a really nice guy who questioned everything, and the world was everything was possible, and it was like I was like Ted Theodore Logan, looking at the world like this some big open-ended. But the more I actually learned, the more limited those possibilities became, and they actually became kind of carved by probabilism, by structure, and by principle, and by I'm not sure if it's made me a nicer person or more grumpy. I'm not sure if the grumpiness of Nietzsche and Ayn Rand and these great philosophers, they don't tend to be really, really super happy. They tend to be really, really surly. Existentialism pisses people off.
Yeah, I've pissed a lot of people off having existential crises at the end of festivals after I did too many drugs.
Nice. Crackers and orange juice.
Yeah. Oh, get a little bit of that cellulose in there. It does miracles for hangovers.
Yep. All right, man. Well, I appreciate the talk. It was a good podcast, and
yeah. Anytime you need someone to help you fill a couple hours, I'm always interested.
Bounce some ideas off of,
Yeah.
The solo podcast is it's really just talking to people.
Yeah.
Really, it's a weird one. It's just talking at people is really what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's enjoyable and informative.
Probably not. Probably not.
Well, I enjoyed it, so I'll mindlessly
self-indulge. Well, no, this one I think will be enjoyable. But if a person's trying to have a solo cast, it is really tough. It is really tough. Shit. Except for Eric Weinstein. When I heard about the Portal, Eric Weinstein's Portal, I was so fucking excited, man. In fact, I didn't even watch it until I'd watched every single interview that he's done with everybody else. Because I was like, I love Eric Weinstein so much. The guy's like porn. And then I listened to the Portal, and I was devastated, disappointed. It was horrible.
Oh, it's not as good?
It was horrible.
Oh shit.
No, it was really shitty. Yeah, like people interviewing him is dynamic and great and excellent.
Especially Lex Friedman.
Yeah,
I like that one episode. I like that one episode where Lex was like, "Okay, can you please break down your geometric unity?" And then Brett is just Eric. Eric is just fucking with him to the point where he's just like, "You got a bottle of vodka? Do you want to get drunk? Like, how can I help you, Lex?" He's like, "Stop fucking with me and tell me how to do it." And it's just like, I can tell it to you real easy, but it's not as fun as doing this.
Yeah. Well, and too, it's one of the other problems is people don't want to do the groundwork. Yeah. They want some easy explanation of something, but unfortunately, easy explanations of something still take a lot of groundwork. They really do. You have to understand how a bunch of things work in physics in order to be able to appreciate anything about a unified theory. Right. And if you don't, you've never taken the time to, then you can't expect somebody to hold your hand to get you there, right? There's no short form for unified theory.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
Yeah, or would it be unified theory?
Take a decade first and learn about physics, and then because he's going to start citing stuff like you've read it, right? You've read his unified theory thing?
Yeah, like 3 or 4 times, and it's getting closer to making sense. The Dirac equation is a good place to start.
Yeah, but that's just it, right? Like he doesn't cite ideas as formula. He cites, first of all, you have to have a good understanding of a whole bunch of equations first, because it's how these equations fit together that's really what he's working with as a unified theory. It's the relationship between these theories. So if you're like, I've never heard of the Dirac equation, well, then you probably shouldn't be in the conversation. You're not really qualified to be part of the conversation, and if you really want to know, but you don't want to learn the Dirac equation, then that's like saying, I want to know how cars work, but I don't want to know anything about aerodynamics or engines and
internal combustion
and the wheel. I don't want to know anything about that, and I don't want to have ever read a thing, and I'm not interested in it, but please tell me exactly how a car works, because I really want to know.
Let me jump in there and go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So no, that's his problem, is he's dealing with people that are stupid on purpose. They have access to everything that Eric Weinstein has access to as far as mathematics and physics. He's not a physicist. He's a mathematician. And in fact, he's an economics mathematician, right? He works for Peter Thiel. He doesn't work for nuclear physicists and stuff.
Yeah, he's a money manager, essentially. He just manages a shit ton of money. How much money? Fucking probably millions.
Who knows? Yeah, and he's probably just dealing with the math. Yeah, he's probably just dealing with the math and the formulas and the predictions, right? But so if he's coming up with a unified theory that has to do with the Dirac equation and spinors and different things like that, and you've got somebody from AI who's like, tell me about it. Well, Lex Friedman, unlike us, has a doctorate.
Yeah.
Right.
And he's super humble about everything too. He's just like,
but he's got a doctorate. So if he doesn't get the Dirac equation, and if he doesn't get the basic physics, if he hasn't taken the physics courses, then that's by choice.
Yeah.
At that point, right? If you went to university for 6 years and you never took physics, that was by choice. That's not like because you're not in academia. I didn't take physics. I didn't take anything. I didn't graduate. Right? So if I didn't take physics, it's like part of the package of not having taken anything. If you spent 6 years going to a university campus every single day, going to courses every single day to get a degree, and you skipped out on a course, then that means that you didn't want to take it. You voluntarily opted out of it. So now when you go to the brainchild on the forefront of that and say, can you please dummy it down for me? They have every right to say you had every opportunity to learn it and you didn't, so fuck off.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you're just simply not going to understand it without knowing this previous stuff. And I mean, in Lex's defense, I don't think Lex is trying to get the dummied version for himself as much as he's trying to get it for his audience.
His audience, yeah.
Because
for sure.
He's a very smart fellow.
Yeah.
And if he does struggle with getting it, then that just lends a little bit of credence to the rest of us who don't get it. Because if he can't get it, then there's no sense in the rest of us shaming ourselves over it. Much like Stephen Hawking's, his first book, that was just indecipherable. He had to put out a brief history of time that was like the layman's guide to it, just so that somebody could enjoy it. Otherwise, it's literally only academians that can break down all the maths. Anyway, we've got 5 minutes left, so we're gonna have to get out of here. We will see you again. Thank you for joining us, Danny Jordão.
Thank you.
And we'll continue to question everything. Peace out.